I'm live. Awesome. Okay. Hopefully this is working. And this is a weird way to open up a live video, but I'm going to do it anyway. Anyway, hello, Buggy fans. We're just 12 days away from Raceday 2025, but with Pittsburgh weather wreaking havoc on rolls this semester, we haven't had much of a chance to see buggies rolling. So to get everyone hyped for this year, we figured we'd get the gang together and watch some races. The Buggy Alumni Association History Committee reached deep into the archives this year to pull out the races from, 2024. Because what better way to get hyped for this year's races than to remind yourself of what happened last year? So let me set the stage here. A monsoon came in on Thursday in Pittsburgh that not only flooded streets overnight and pushed Carnival's opening ceremonies to Friday, but also left the roads so wet that Friday's races were canceled. More rain came on Friday that threatened that we might have the first Sunday race day in 25 years, but it stopped in the middle of the night, and then strong winds were enough to dry the course overnight. As we got ready for race day on Saturday, one stubborn rain cloud released a few drops just before the start of races on Saturday, which delayed the start for a few minutes, but finally we were underway with race day 2025. So that is my little pre-prepared introduction, and from this point on, it's just going to be me and other people talking. So this is a race day rewatch of race day 2024. If you've never been to one of our race day rewatches before, it's pretty simple. We just basically press play on a playlist of all the heats from a race. And we talk about the races and watch them and have some fun. Feel free to join us in the chat on YouTube or join us in the CMU Buggy Alumni Association Discord. That's cmubuggy.org/chat. You can talk to us there. You can talk to us on YouTube. I do have some special guests coming in this time. In the past, it's just been me talking. That gets a little annoying over 3 hours. But with that said, I'm just going to press play as we get started here, and then we'll do some introductions. This is Race Day 2024, and we're kicking it off with an exhibition heat between SDC and Fringe. It is a timing heat on Saturday.
Here we go for the first exhibition.
All right, we got SDC, we got Fringe
here. As we're doing this, we're going to be talking over some of the audio from the
Good morning, Mark Estes, and here we are
from the actual races.
The course is dry,
but if you can't hear anything, or you can't hear me, or you can't hear the races, or whatever, just post a message and we will hopefully fix it. So with that, I will say, whoops. My name is Brian Arsham. I am the Buggy Alumni Association archivist and chair of the History Committee. And I do have at least one special guest here at the moment, with more to come. But Lewis, you want to introduce yourself here?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, everybody. I'm Lewis. I'm currently a senior on SDC. I was the head mechanic last year for Race Day 2024. And yeah, I guess one thing I'd want to start by saying is funny story about what you were saying, how races were delayed on this race day. I was pretty much single-handedly responsible for that. The safety chair wanted to push through and go, and SDC happened to have a buggy in two of the first 3 heats. And I was kind of looking at the safety chair. I'm like, yo, there's a bunch of dirt in the chute. Like, you can kind of see it in the video right now, actually. There's a bunch of dirt in the chute. We had the driver go kind of wide to avoid it. But we eventually, decided to push through, cleaned it up as best as we could. So.
Yeah, and I think even Mark Estes, who was calling in the chute last year, was talking about there was a stubborn puddle down there that teams, up until about a minute or two before the rolls started, we're still trying to sweep away some of the dirt and some of the wetness there.
Yep, guilty as charged.
Yeah, and you know what? It's probably good, because it's better to be safe than sorry. And all things considered, had a pretty clean, safe year. Well, as we watch the races today, we'll see. But there were no spins in the chute. There was one minor spin earlier on that we'll see in the women's heats, and then one collision later on in the men's heats, but otherwise a very smooth, clean day. So what is it like? Because I've never experienced this being in. Obviously, this is an exhibition heat and this is a timing heat, but as an SDC mechanic, do you do anything special for this very first heat of the day? Or is it just you put on whatever wheels you have, you strap them on, you put it on the line, and you just send it down?
So for us, we kind of treated this race basically like our men's C race.
Okay.
That's why we had the exhibition. We had more pushers available than drivers. Last year, we only had 2 drivers who made it to Raceday. So we had 15 guys, and the last 5 we were like, we want to make sure you guys get the chance to race, even though it won't count for anything. So that's why we gave them this exhibition. So we treated it like we normally treat our C team heats. So.
Oh, nice. And so I will periodically ask you things about 2024, and again, as you're watching, and for anyone joining us in the future, anyone coming on, feel free, like, if you see anything, whether it's your team or other teams, and you have stuff you want to talk about, feel free to just talk about it. But I'll because we're getting ready for Raceday 2025, I also will ask about things upcoming. So I know you guys have, well, at least one new buggy that's going to be racing this year. I know you have 2 buggies that you built, and I do want to hear a little bit from you about Gluttony, because I think that's fascinating, and this may be the first time that you get a chance to tell that story to the wider buggy audience. But what's your team's plan for this year? Like, are you have 4, but I think 4 buggies have shown up for rolls so far. Are you planning on racing all 4 of them, or are there other plans, or are you not sure yet as we figure out what gets qualified and with just a week left to go?
Yeah. So I guess right now, tentatively, our plan is to roll all 4 buggies. We have 4 pretty great drivers. 2 of them are now experienced, who rolled in 2024, and 2 of them are new. We're still we're still trying to see if our D team driver in Avarice is going to be ready for, that type of speed on race day, but we feel optimistic that she will be after tomorrow and a good weekend of truck weekend. We are going to be rolling 2 new buggies that have never raced before, which will be Lust and our new buggy Paranoia. We're very excited about both of those buggies. Finally got back into a rhythm of building new ones, which is something SDC fell out of for a while there. Yeah, so we're planning on having a full A through D team structure, and that'll be nice.
Awesome. Is that both for the men's and women's?
Hopefully, yes. I'm sure, as other teams will say, it can be very difficult to find pushers to fill a D team, especially on the women's side of things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we already have on the men's side. We have enough for D team plus exhibitions for the men.
Oh, nice. That's great.
So we've got a lot of bodies there. We'll see on the women's side. We might have to convince some of our mechanics to do some pushing.
Well, you know what? It's always fun to get the mechanics. Either the mechanics are on the women's side, the drivers. Get them a chance to push. It's always great.
It's actually a good idea. I'll ask the drivers if they want to do a women's D. It's not a bad call.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys have a bunch of drivers this year, so some of them get a chance to turn the tables on the buggy here.
Yeah, we were talking about doing a driver exhibition where it would be, one of our drivers actually drives, and then the other 3 push, and then we have a girl who does some push practices for us. She would be the 4th person, and then me, because I drive Gluttony, I'd be the 5th. So we did talk about that as a potential exhibition. But that actually isn't a bad idea to make that more of an actual women's D team.
Yeah, and I will say, throughout buggy history, especially with D teams, or even if it's just teams that aren't very competitive, even with a top team, or even a B or a C, whatever it is, just because you're in a competitive race, just because you're in the men's races or the women's races, the all gender, doesn't mean you can't just have some fun with it. Especially on that D team, CIA has a history of pushing in suits and formal wear. Oh, you've got people pushing in costumes sometimes, and these happen with actual D teams as opposed to just the exhibitions, where it's I think part of it is it gets you a little later in the day, which lets people sleep in a little bit more.
Driver will be Kalen Zhang.
100%. I think that's a lesson we kind of SDC learned the hard way last year. Is that Buggy? It's important to have fun with Buggy. It's important to not take it too seriously. That was a trap we had fallen into for a long time, and we realized that, chilling out a little bit, and, making sure to enjoy it while we're doing it, having some fun, really does help everything just roll better, just in general.
Yeah, definitely.
So you were asking about gluttony. I'd be happy to give a little synopsis about that.
Hold on. Before we get to gluttony, which we will definitely talk about, this is your heat, I believe, in the all-gender that we're watching now. So I'm curious, because you guys do end up winning all gender, and you are pushing Hill 2 here. So,
yes, that's correct.
So, as the buggy comes out, you're also the head mechanic, so, like, you're not in the truck getting the buggy ready at this point in time. But what's going through your mind as you get to the starting line, and as the race starts here, when you're on Hill 2?
I mean, obviously there are a lot of nerves, on race day for us, because we hadn't raced the year before due to disqualification. Basically, all of our mechanics on the team, every single one of us, including myself, actually, this was our first race day as mechanics. So we're really, starting from scratch. Everything's fresh. And obviously from a pushing standpoint, like I'm pushing right now in this video, you're definitely super nervous. You're like, I don't want to mess it up for the team, want to keep it inside the lane line, give it as good of a shove as I can, all of that.
I gotta tell you, pretty good shove there.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Did you, as a mechanic, I know from back in my old days when I was a buggy chair, just at rolls, you get a lot of Hill 2 pushes in as practice, but was that a role that you had taken in rolls before? Like, did you have a lot of practice on Hill 2?
Yeah, that had become my role at that point, just because it's so natural at rolls for me to do that.
Yeah.
At the time, I also, along with being the head mechanic of SDC that year, I also served as sort of the head driver, because we didn't have any experienced drivers.
Yes.
Everybody was new that year.
Yeah.
So as a result, I sort of took on the burden of training the new drivers and making sure they were ready to roll. And because of that, my job at rolls was to be follow car driver the whole time, so I could get good videos of the drivers, make sure their lines look good, all that stuff. And I had plenty of other, mechanics who are willing to do a lot of good work in the tent and the truck. So I didn't have to worry about that as much, which is unconventional for the head mechanic, but it ended up being a good dynamic for our team, for sure.
That's awesome.
Let's see, here we are, yeah.
So now,
another thing that was really cool. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, one thing that was really cool for us with this all-gender race is it was new for us. Our team had never done it before. We knew that no matter what we did, we'd get a team record, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, very awesome.
And here we go.
Yeah, and as a team, we had a lot of internal discussion about how we wanted to treat this race. Obviously, it's a very new race. It's dynamic. We're not exactly sure, what's the right way to do it. How do we keep it within the spirit of doing the all-gender race, while continuing to try and compete and trying to be close to the top.
How much?
So as you can see, we decided to go 3 guys and 2 girls. There was a lot of debate on which hills those guys and girls should be on. So that was a fun little problem solving exercise that the team went through. And yeah, we were super lucky to end up with a win in this race and a course record, and that's something our team was very proud of this year. So.
That's awesome. So as they're coming up the back hills and as they approach the finish line, I mean, I guess again as head mechanic there, and once it gets to the finish line, you're probably there catching along with the other mechanics and whatnot. But are you watching at that point from on the jumbotron at the top of the hill, or are you hanging out with your team at that point? Like, what are you doing as the buggy comes up the back hills and you've done your job already?
No, at that point, as soon as I push that hill 2, I'm right back in head mechanic mode. All pusher Lewis is gone, and I'm back into doing all the mechanic work. So I help the mechanics catch the buggy just like I always do for every race. And yeah, we definitely like to watch the jumbotron. That is a very helpful resource to see how things are going. We also, I'm trying to think of what I was going to say. We always have a live stream going inside our truck as well, just to keep an eye on how everything's going, just to watch. It's a lot of fun.
I was going to ask about that because it's interesting, and it'll come up a little bit later today with DG on the women's side when there was an incident the heat before that where everything got delayed exactly 8 minutes. So DG ended up coming out a heat early, and awkwardly being on the line, and there was some confusion there. But are you guys when you're in the truck? Are you paying attention to what in addition to your duties as mechanics and making sure your buggies are ready for their races, are you paying attention to the other races, the other teams, and seeing what's going on the course while you're doing that?
Yeah, 100%. I think we have people who stay outside the truck to keep track of everything that's going on outside the truck, keeping everybody who's inside the truck up to date. And then the people who are outside the truck communicating to the people inside the truck, that communication helps to keep things running smoothly, because at the end of the day, the people inside the truck are running the show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so now that your heat is over, and this heat between SIE and Pike A actually has the fastest time of the all-gender heat, but they end up being disqualified for a 5-second violation. We talked over it, but it took them a little while to get out to the starting line here. And for those who are new to Buggy, I would be surprised if anyone watching this is new to Buggy. But if you're new to Buggy, you have to be on the starting line. The only person touching the Buggy when there's 5 seconds to go before the start of the race can be the Hill 1 pusher. Mechanics all have to be clear by then. Pika didn't get their Buggy out until about 3 seconds left before the start of the heat. So this, unfortunately for them, this time did not count, at least in the official standings, though I believe it does count towards seeding for future years in the all-gender division. So anyway, so turning back to what you were saying, for those who are watching and don't know, SDC, in addition to Lust, which was built last year but didn't race, and Paranoia, which is the new buggy for this year, they also, or I guess, Lewis, I don't know if it was the team or just you specifically, but built a second new buggy this year called Gluttony. And why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because that is probably the most excited I've been for a new buggy in many years.
Yeah, so Gluttony's a pretty funny concept. So, there's been pretty much every mechanic's dream in buggy is to drive a buggy, right? Anybody who's around the buggies all the time, working on them, building them, making them fast, of course, deep down, they wish they were the ones driving the buggy around the course. And so there have been talk for a long time from people all across buggy and a lot of different teams who are like, we have a whole bunch of different nicknames for big buggies we could build. We have a bunch of different ideas for how you could build a buggy cheaply that's big enough for, like a large person such as myself to drive. And, there's a guy on Apex. I think he's their push captain right now. His name's Shaborn, and he's around 6'8". He's like a super tall guy. So there's a whole meme where everybody's like, we should build the Buggy so Shaborn can drive a buggy. There's the name Mammoth that's been thrown around a lot. There's a bunch of different, people are really excited about the notion of a very large buggy getting constructed. And I made the, I guess you could say, the mistake of, catting up a design for how you could build a buggy as cheaply as possible that would be big enough to fit Shaborn. I was basically like, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm not going to optimize for speed in any capacity. I'm going to do whatever I can to cut cost as much as I can. So instead of using, classic materials for buggy such as carbon fiber or fiberglass or, core materials or anything like that, I just said, let's buy some plywood from Home Depot, right? So, 4x8 sheets of plywood, a 2x4 for the push bar, some aluminum and steel rods for the axles, for the steering, caliper brakes for the brakes. Really just bare bones, simple design, cheapest possible buggy. And I actually went through the exercise of making a CAD model for it, and I did a little spreadsheet to see how much, put all the links and all the costs, the bill of materials. And it ended up coming out to around $680. And once I had made this spreadsheet and shared it around with people, people got really excited about it, more excited than I thought, just because they actually see this design that could come into formulation and potentially roll around the course. And this is a really funny story. So I didn't ever actually intend on building Gluttony, ever. It was sort of a joke to put it in CAD and be like, hey, look, you could build a buggy for $700 if you wanted. And one of my alumni came to one of our roles at one point. He comes up to me. He's like, hey, can I see that CAD file of Gluttony? And so I pull it up and show it to him. Hands me $700 in cash and says, go build it.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm like, wait, what? Like, you're being for real? Like, oh, you actually want me to build this piece of crap? Okay, sure. So it became my winter break project to build this, crazy, crappy wooden buggy. I got the chance to do it in my garage back home in Virginia with my dad, which was a really cool experience to, build a buggy with your dad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, yeah, it was great. And one of the fun facts about Gluttony is that it took us, maybe 2 weeks to build, less than 40 hours of work. It was so simple to put everything together. There's no monocoque to deal with. You just build the wooden frame in a couple hours. The steering is literally just an axle connected to a handlebar. So really nothing complicated there. The buggy without a person in it weighs over 100 pounds. So it's not like it's ever going to give you any speed. But,
Well, it'll give you some speed
very simple.
it'll give you some free roll speed.
This is true, unless your wheels are unless your wheels fall apart under the heavy load,
That's a
which
good point.
based on some of the very cheap wheels I bought, honestly might have if I rolled it around the course. So anyway, once the buggy was built, I bring it back to campus. I loaded it up in my pickup truck, kept it in my garage in my house in Pittsburgh, and I went to go cape it, and it wasn't just an STC event. I think there were people from 4 or 5 different buggy teams who were excited about this gluttony concept. And so we tried to cape it. We passed every test pretty easily, except for the brake test. What we realized is that it's very hard to design a mechanical system that will stop, over 300 pounds of weight successfully in the brake test. Those rules are obviously pretty stringent, for good reason.
Yep.
So I ended up failing that test by like less than 6 inches.
Ooh.
It was very, very close. And if I had, maybe cut 5 or 10 pounds from my own personal weight or from the buggy's weight, I think we would have passed. So at the end of the day, just due to how few rolls we've had this spring because of the crazy weather and all of that good stuff, I made the decision to say, hey, here's the buggy. I proved what I wanted to prove, which is that you could build a buggy for $700, and it would pass capes if you had a driver who was light enough in it. And that's really what I wanted to show. And I had a lot of fun doing capes and doing the brake test and moving at speed. And I kind of realized, I could roll and it would be fun, but I don't want to take away from the actual drivers this year. And fortunately, in the future, that buggy's going to stay in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure somebody's going to have fun rolling it around the course.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I mean, I gotta say, there's photos of this buggy, and I think there's even videos of an attempted brake test during capes on the CMU Buggy website. There's two things I love about this buggy. One, and they're both things you talked about. One is the fact that it's so big that literally anyone can drive this thing, which, again, as you said, as a person who has participated in buggy for a long time and is too big to fit in a normal buggy, the idea that I could drive something is awesome. I've always wanted to do like a double-decker sort of buggy where you could have an actual driver driving the thing and then someone else like on top of them seeing what it's like to be in a buggy but not have the responsibility for driving. But this is the sort of thing where like anyone can do it. It's great. And the other thing I love about this is the idea that you can build a buggy, and yes, maybe it's not going to be a world beater. It's not going to set record. It's not going to set course records. It may not win the men's or the women's races, but you can build a buggy. You can have a team. You can be part of the excitement. You can be part of the atmosphere, and you can actually get out there for $700. Right? Like you can actually build a working buggy, field a team, and like we were saying before, like they're your D teams that are out there now where it's all mechanics, or even back in the old days with SAE's limo. It's like you can have a lot of fun and just make it an event for your organization and just come out. Everyone supports it. You kind of go around, have a good time, get the crowd into it. I will tell you that if and when Gluttony hits the course, it will probably be the loudest roar in the chute that you've ever heard, just because people like when new ideas come in, and something like that where it's literally anyone can do this and it takes you 2 weeks to build. You don't need specialized training. You don't need to figure out how to deal with carbon fiber molds, and you don't need to deal with all figuring out how to attach a push bar. I guess you still need to attach a push bar, but it's a lot easier when it's just wood attached to wood.
Couple screws. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, well, when you try to attach wood to carbon fiber, like AEPI did with Zephyrus back in the day, that push bar doesn't work quite as well. I guess the push
Yeah,
bar
you're not
works.
gonna have a good time doing that.
Yeah, I guess the push bar kind of works. The problem is it does some major damage to the shell of the buggy, but
Right.
but yeah, so like it's those two things, and it just shows like if you just want to have a good time and you just want to be part of the sport, it's in a way it's kind of like a blitz booth, right? You don't need for people who do booth at Carnival, you don't need thousands of dollars to build this gigantic structure. You can take 500, 600 bucks, build something that is works, gets out there, you have a good time, and honestly, if you're doing that, and if you're a new organization, I can't promise this, but like you're probably gonna win a trophy of some type. Just for participating and being part of the sport. So if you just want a trophy, you just want to win an award at award ceremony, that's a good way to do it, and a cheap way to do it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. That was sort of what I wanted to prove with this buggy. I don't know what's going to end up happening to Gluttony once I leave campus. This is my last year at Carnegie Mellon. I don't know if SDC wants to keep it or not. If they don't, I'm sure they're probably going to either lend it or rent it or sell it out or something like that. I've already had a couple orgs who are interested in this sort of thing. KGB being the most obvious one.
It feels like a perfect fit for KGB too. That kind
Exactly.
of design, that style.
100%. So it's certainly possible that they purchase Gluttony from us, and we'll see if I turn a profit or not. But
I also have to
somebody will
say,
roll it.
I also have to say, like, it's the perfect name that fits in with the SDC mold. It's like, it's so perfect for the buggy. Like, it just works really well.
100%. Gluttony was the perfect name. I couldn't think of anything better. We even gave it, a traditional SDC logo. Put it on the back of the buggy like we do with the normal SDC buggies. It's a nice little pig with some sunglasses. Figured that was a fun little touch. I put that in with a wood burner. I guess my last note about Gluttony last thing I'd want to say about it is I designed the buggy so you could manufacture it completely by hand. So that means no machining, no welding, no special tools. In theory, you could build the entire buggy with nothing other than a drill and a handsaw.
Oh wow.
That was, part of my goal in building this thing was to say anybody with any middle school level of shop experience could build this thing.
Yeah.
I did end up using a drill press and, like a hand tap a couple places, but these are all tools that could be replaced with hand tools. And I only used those because I had easy access to them and had training on how to use them.
Yeah.
I did not machine anything. I did not weld anything. I definitely didn't do any molding of anything. Definitely nothing composite anywhere on that buggy. So
That's
thermoforming, nothing crazy that a lot of the other buggy teams do.
That's awesome. Not to interrupt the story, and this was all great. I do want to point out on the broadcast right now. This is Robo Buggy. They're in 2024 was the first time they ever rolled two buggies in the same year, and the first time there have been two robotic buggies in the same heat. NAND we saw stop, and I believe we will see them again coming up in a little bit here. The Robo Buggy attempted a pass test, which I guess was technically successful. NAND stopped just before the stop sign, reportedly because there was some pedestrian or something in the street, and they either hit the brakes or maybe they lost connection with the RC controller. There's something like that, but there's a good podcast episode this season featuring 2025 sweepstakes chair Elena Harley and her brother, who is a member of Robo Buggy and is the person in the bottom right now that's holding NAND on the sidewalk, as well as her father, who was a Pioneers chair and sweepstakes chair back in the day, and a couple of other people who are another Pioneers person from back in the day, and his son, who is a CIA pusher, or was a CIA pusher in 2024, and I believe is still a pusher in
Yeah, Michael's still
2025.
around.
Yeah, okay.
Michael's pushing this year.
But yeah, so it's a great episode. Honestly, every episode that Will and Rachel put together on that podcast are great. In fact, Lewis, you were on one last year, talking about, and you mentioned this briefly here, but about the kind of rebirth of SDC last year after the safety issues and the ultimate DQ from 2023, just kind of rebuilding the org in a sense from scratch. And kind of changing that culture. It's a great episode. If you're watching this and you haven't listened to that one, you should on the podcast. If you go to, you can find the podcast. It's called Shoot the Shit. It's on all of your favorite podcast platforms, as well as if you go to cmubuggy.org/podcast, you can get direct access to it. But yeah, so RoboBuggy did kind of complete this pass with Short Circuit, although it looks a little different than your typical pass, but it did pass a buggy on the course, which is very exciting. And they're doing a lot of work this year to improve their autonomous their autonomous tracking, I guess, is a way to phrase that. I don't know what the right wording is. But yeah, so we'll see them again this year. I think with both buggies again. They've had both out this year, so it wouldn't surprise me if they both roll on race day together again. This year, I think with both buggies. But yeah, so here on the video, we're moving over to the women's heats. The all gender, again, SDC A taking that one after a Pika A DQ, and as Lewis said, setting a team record as well as a course record in the process, with their 236.27 was their time. CAA A was second with a 254.65, and SAE A earning their first ever all gender trophy with a 256.08. Here we got the women's heat starting between CIAC and Fringe B. There are a total of 11 women's heats, I believe.
Love that picture.
Hey, Ben. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, so now I'm curious here as. All right, so I'm looking at the heat schedule here for Lewis. I mean, SDC is really later in the day. I guess you only had two buggies last year, but like, are you again just kind of back to the truck now, because now you're full on head mechanic mode here? Are you like, what are you doing at this point to get ready? Are you doing anything, or is this kind of nap time, and you're really kicking into gear more at like heats 3 and 4? I think your first heat is heat 7 here. But is there anything special you're doing at the start of women's heats to get ready for these later women's heats?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing at this point in time, because we didn't really have that many buggies last year, in a lot of ways, race day was very chill. We didn't have a ton going on. We had a lot of time between all of our rolls, except for those first two. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the mechanics were able to kind of take things sort of easy. The biggest thing that I was doing during this time was helping the chairman and helping the push captains make sure all the pushers were ready to go, making sure they knew where to go for their hills, all that stuff like that, because race day gets confusing.
Yeah.
Additionally, we were helping, checking brakes, checking, safety equipment, all of that good stuff before we rolled the buggies around the course.
Now for your push teams, do you guys, obviously SDC is well known at push practice at nights, and you guys are typically out every weekend, but are your pushers out for most of the spring, or do you guys end up getting pushers more towards the end of the semester, or I say spring, maybe it's the full year. I don't know how how many of the people are like regular active members of SDC, both SDC Buggy or maybe SDC more broadly, or how many of them are people who come in within the last kind of few weeks as you get final times and figure out where people go?
Yeah, so you definitely see both types of people. At the end of the day, we sort of think of SDC Buggy as a subsect of the Student Dormitory Council.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of the Student Dormitory Council is to make the student experience at Carnegie Mellon better. And so because of that, we're sort of having the mentality of everybody's welcome whenever. As in, people can show up just a couple weeks before race day and get times and try and push. And then there are also some really, really dedicated, really amazing pushers that, push throughout the entire year, come to rolls every day, and help us make sure the buggies get back to the top of the hill once they go through the shoot turn. We have both types of people. In our case, the way we do like our team selections and stuff like that is obviously for our top teams, the ones that are trying to, vie for a trophy. We want to put the fastest possible teams together. But for some of those lower teams, like our D teams and our C teams, we definitely do, want to make sure those people who are really a part of the team, who are coming to rolls every weekend, we want to make sure those people get a chance to push on race day. So that's something we really, emphasize within our team culture.
That's great. I mean, and I mean, I think we've talked about it several times here, but like just the idea that you can have that you can always, well, I say you can always, but like getting pushers is sometimes easier, and like just having someone who wants to push. Sometimes it's tough to have enough buggies or enough drivers to cover those additional people. And it's nice to see, it's nice when you have enough drivers or enough pushers where you can actually do that. Holt, I'm now very curious, and this is not a question for Lewis, but this is a question for anyone viewing the stream. Did the stream fall behind, or maybe this preview window did? Because I'm looking at, right now as I'm talking, I'm looking at Spirit Women's B roster, but I see a preview window that has CIAC just approaching the stop sign, so I don't know if it's a me issue or
Stream
a
might be a little bit behind, but it's not that far.
Okay.
I've got both up at the moment, and it's like maybe a couple seconds behind.
Okay, so yeah, all right. So somehow my preview window has fallen behind, but that's fine. That doesn't really matter. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't talking about things and finding out that we're like 2 minutes behind. Good.
Well, I guess if you're 2 minutes behind, or like if your preview window is, so are you saying that you're going off of the preview window?
No, I'm watching the actual video. So I'm talking in accordance with what I'm seeing on my computer, but I didn't know if the stream was that far behind.
So you're talking about us reacting to what we're seeing.
Either that. Well, really, what I'm most concerned about is as a little preview. Between the women's heats and the men's heats, I've got a few trivia questions, and I want to make sure that when I press start on the trivia, that the stream isn't super far behind, so that we run out of time before. So as long as it says low latency, it should be like 5 to 15 seconds behind at the most. But I just 2 minutes was a little worrisome. But it looks like it's only about 10 seconds behind. I think I figured out what my issue was on the preview side. So
that's good.
As I do tech support live to the wider world, because I'm sure this is things that people are fascinated by.
We had all those comments that Rachel found and shared.
Yeah, that's why.
That's really fun to read.
And again, I'm assuming that anyone and everyone who's watching this Race Day Rewatch right now probably knows what Buggy is. But hey, if you're just finding us, hopefully you're enjoying this so far. A reminder that Race Day 2025 is in 2 weeks. It's April 3rd and 4th and 5th. It's 2 Fridays from now. I don't remember whether that's the 3rd or the 4th. But whichever day it is, that's when they start. You will be able to catch that live on CMU TV, which you will be able to find through the CMUbuggy.org website. Here is a great shot of Spirit B's driver. In case you are new, there are people inside of these buggies, as made very obvious by that particular shot. That's as we were talking before about Gluttony and Lewis being able to drive. There are people actually inside these things. The Trying to think if there's anything else special to talk about here. I don't know, and I'll open the door to you, Ben. Also, if you have other things, if you have other thoughts from last year, or questions that you have for Lewis while he's here. But
Ooh, man, I have been out of it really. Like this is the least amount of buggy I've done in a couple decades, I guess, at this point. So yeah, so I'm like picking everything up as I go. I don't know how much you guys have talked about just like how this year has gone in general, like how it's felt, being on the course, coming back from COVID and stuff like that. Like I've been listening to a bit of the podcasts and stuff. But Lewis as a current student, what's sort of the feeling around, and you've been, you're what, a junior or senior now at this point?
Yeah, I'm a senior now. I'm an old guy now.
Yeah. Hey, wait, no, I have a jacket that says that. You can't take that away.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I got mine when I was, I think about to graduate. So you're right in that right time frame for that too. You're good. But yeah, so as someone who's sort of seen Buggy come out of the pandemic a bit, and or at least like you came in, were you involved as a freshman like early on? Have you been involved the whole time?
So I was marginally involved as a freshman. This is actually a really fun story that I like to tell people. I used to be on the varsity swim team at Carnegie Mellon. And one of my buddies who I lived with, who was also on the swim team with me, his name was Christian. He and I were interested in engineering clubs, and we were looking for, different clubs we could do that with. And we found Buggy, and it became a really obvious natural thing for us because it was through being an athlete. Obviously there was athletics involved with Buggy. There's obviously a lot of engineering involved with Buggy, and there's things that we were all interested in. So he and I both signed up for SDC because we saw their Buggy, on the cut when they were tabling, and we saw Bane, and we thought Bane was really pretty, and we wanted to build a Buggy just like that. And
pretty buggy.
As we go on through our college careers, Christian actually ends up dropping SDC and rushes Pica, and he became their Buggy chairman. So obviously he stuck with Pica, and I'm with SDC still, and he and I have both stayed really involved with Buggy throughout our 4 years at Carnegie Mellon. And you were asking about how we've bounced back from COVID. I think this year has been, probably by far the best year I've ever seen at Carnegie Mellon in terms of Buggy. I obviously never saw what it was like before COVID. I wasn't around. But this year we have more teams who are out. The Greek teams seem to be more passionate, seem to care a little more than they did in past years. The independent teams are continuing to get stronger. I think one thing. How do you
mean that the Greek teams care a little bit more? Like what's the story there?
Well, I just mean they're coming out to rolls more. Like they're out in the fall a lot more.
Implying that they weren't doing that before.
In past years, they definitely maybe came out once maximum, and really just emphasized the spring for rolls, and that worked for them at the time. Whatever works for their fraternity, important.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, they came out in the fall more this year than I'd ever seen.
Gotcha.
Which I think is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I also think one thing that's a positive sign is that a lot of teams are building new buggies now, including those Greek orgs, which a lot of Greek orgs haven't built in a while, and that's a really positive sign. So, yeah, in general, I think there's an upwards trajectory.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting hearing you say that because I want to say, and Brian, you were a little bit before me, like when I was a student, I want to say that there was a sort of a split between the Greeks. There were some Greeks that were out every day, no matter what, Pike, of course, being one of those. But then there was sort of a group of Greeks that would come out, as they could, I want to say. And that usually also involved not getting out in the fall really at all, maybe a day. So it sounds like that sort of spread to all the Greeks post the pandemic a bit, and we're starting to see some of them come back. So which if you're willing to out them, which are the ones that I mean, of course we could look this up on the BAA site, but like which are the ones that you are maybe you expect that you see them out more and see them out more in the fall, and which are the ones that are maybe more surprising, if any, that you see coming out in the fall or yeah.
Yeah, so SIGEP has really turned on the jets. They have 3 buggies right now, and all of their pushers look extremely fast. They came out a lot more in the fall this year. They look awesome. I think if I had to make any, hot take predictions for this particular race day, I think SIGEP is going to be a very good, strong contender for, top 6 times.
Okay.
I
think
just want viewers who are watching to know that Ben and Lewis didn't plan this, and it just so happens that we're talking about this as SIGEP A women's are pushing here in 2024.
It's all a conspiracy.
But I, just from following from afar, I think Lewis is correct.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest surprise for me on the SIGEP side is that Barracuda is actually back this year. We thought it had been permanently retired after a crash in 2023, and they managed to rebuild it and repair it enough to get it back rolling. So hopefully we'll see it on race day this year.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is that Barracuda was essentially rebuilt. Obviously, that buggy had been a very successful buggy for a long time. I think it went like a 208 or something ridiculously
fast. Yeah, it's SIGEP's best all-time buggy.
Yeah, and obviously, it was a bummer when they had to retire it, a year or two ago due to all the delay it had. I remember at Design Comp one year, the safety chairman at the time, she asked me to come and check out Barracuda just to see what I thought about the D-Lam. And I remember pressing down on the shell, and it was like a tennis ball. It was very. I don't think there was really much of a shell left.
Right.
So it sounds like they've done a really good job of reinforcing the shell, redoing those layups to make sure the carbon fiber is nice and strong. And now it's back out on the course. Allegedly, it feels a lot stronger. I haven't touched it myself, but
good alleged things there. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Sounds like things are going well for them there, and it definitely looks like they're going well. They're going really fast, so that's really great.
Of course, we just saw in the video the downside of something that happens from time to time with SIGEP. The brakes did not stop cracking in time in the women's A heat, so they were DQ'd for a drops failure. They were also DQ'd in this one for a 5-second violation, because it took them a little while to get away from the buggy, but. Regardless of which one you think was more important, unfortunately for them, they were their time was disqualified.
Hi, Ale.
Hey, Ale. Speaking of, we've got another new guest, another special guest from 2024, a super special guest, if you will, Ale Bonacini, who is the sweepstakes chair in 2024, as well as the safety chair in 2023. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. You're making it sound too good. Too nice.
We're excited to have you. I don't know if you haven't been watching. We've been talking to Lewis Rockwell from SDC, both about some of the stuff going on in 2024, some of the stuff that he's planning or that SDC is doing for 2025, things he's excited about for this year. But I have some various questions for you as well, mostly about 2024, and I understand we'll have to do another rewatch of 2024 in like 5 or 10 years so that you can actually share more of the behind-the-scenes secrets that you probably don't feel comfortable sharing yet.
Yeah, maybe.
But I am a little curious because none of us who are talking right now, but also most of the people out in the viewing community haven't experienced this either. As sweepstakes chair, you're obviously, running around nonstop and doing whatever. I'm curious about two things. One, where are you usually? Like, are you in the lead truck? Are you in the follow truck? Are you somewhere else on the course during these heats? And two, you probably never had a chance to really even process the races as it was going on. Now that we're about a year later, have you processed what happened in Race Day 2024, and do you feel good about everything that happened? Do you feel good about how things went? Do you feel relieved that it's over? Do you feel excited and feel like this was awesome? I'm so glad I was a part of this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think actually, surprisingly enough, on race day, once the races actually start, the chairman has less to do than the safety chair actually does.
Okay.
Which I think is curious, as you would probably think otherwise. But I just chill in the lead truck. When you're chairman, you're there with one of the judges, general assistant judge at the back, or is staying, on the course. I feel like the moment they didn't really get to process a lot of the races. It was pretty hectic. There's a lot to do, a lot of people. I think that the one thing I do remember, and it's probably one of the things I'm the happiest about, we did not have any accidents on race day
Yeah.
2024, which was funny because I remember being in the truck and talking to Josio, who was one of the judges from last year, and I was like, I don't want to say it when we're getting like to the end of the men, but we might not have a race day. We might have a race day with no accidents, which I think probably was one of the biggest things and probably one of the things I was the happiest about.
Yeah.
I'm also happy we even got to have race day on Saturday. We were worried about having to push it to Sunday. I mean, it was raining at like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
The day before, I was actually watching videos a few days ago of the day before race day or what was supposed to be prelims, and literally there was like a river in the back hills. So I think overall it was fun. It's a lot. Don't know if I would do it again as chairman. That's why this year I was like, I'll enjoy Carnival from a different perspective, but it was definitely fun to do that last year.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, it's not an experience that most people have. And yeah, I mean, I remember I was out, I was out there getting ready, getting set up in the broadcast booth at like 6:45 on Saturday, thinking, oh, we somehow managed to avoid the rain, and like it dried just enough so we could actually do this. And then suddenly one cloud dropped some rain on the course, and Lewis was saying he was instrumental in making sure that the chute was dry and clean of all the dirt that came as a result of that before we actually started. But from your perspective, like, how much of a nightmare is that? How much did you have already planned? Like, okay, if this happens, here's what we're gonna do. Like, was it snapping into motion with like, we know the plan, or was it just kind of a scramble and figure out, all right, let's see what we can do, and we'll make it work in somehow.
Yeah, I think that the way it actually works is that we do actually make like various schedules for what things will look like if we don't have Saturday, what things will look like if we don't have Friday, what things will look like if we don't have Friday and Saturday. So I think that in a way that kind of worked out. What was hard, I think, and what we were getting worried about was the fact that we had all gender on top of men and women all on the same day, that we didn't know if we had the time for that. So we kind of had the I guess the schedule set, so that was fine. It was worrisome as it rained more and more during the morning, and then I remember probably Lewis mentioned that they were all with like brooms in the chute, sweeping at this very particular spot that for some reason it was incredibly slippery. It was filled with like dust and dirt. But I think that that was kind of it. I mean, the first thing we do when we get into a situation is remove the exhibitions when we have to like cut into the time that we don't have. But I think that that's kind of it when it came to I guess planning. Thankfully, we kind of got blessed by the weather. Ended up being a great day by the end
Yeah.
of the women's heat, and especially the men's heat. It was great weather,
Yeah.
so we
And
got lucky.
and we definitely we got even more lucky because if it had been rained out on Saturday, the rain date is Sunday, and I believe it rained Sunday as well. So like we wouldn't have even be able to had rolls on Sunday. Would had
Yeah,
to.
I think so. I think it did great Sunday. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. No, I think so. Knock on wood, we'll get 2 full days this year. Hopefully Pittsburgh weather has taken its toll on rolls so much that it'll give us nice days during Carnival. That'll be nice.
Hopefully.
Um, but yeah, so here you got we're watching on the women's rolls as Signews Jaeger. Unfortunately, was the subject of some wind right there and kind of ran over a stick that may have. I have to wonder. I mean, one, it may have cost him a tiny bit of speed, but two, like from a driver's perspective, you're walking around on the course or you're driving in a car. A little stick's not going to do anything. When you're only 3 inches off the ground and these tiny wheels run over a stick. First of all, if it's a forward trike and it's the front wheel running over it, like there's an opening there where it can actually get into the buggy. They have, face shields. They wear goggles and helmets and all this stuff. But I'm sure there's all sorts of debris that can kick up and be more problematic for drivers in the buggy than it would be for most other things that are just happen to be going down the street. Potholes are bad enough for cars and buggies, but even the smallest leaf, stick, twig, squirrel, any of that stuff is a whole nother level of problem for a buggy and a buggy driver.
Yeah, most buggies, I think all buggies now have no suspension, and obviously you're very close to the ground, like you said. Any little bump in the road, even if it's like a pebble or anything like that, you're gonna feel that bump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if
I
there's
think,
anything I learned from gluttony, it's not comfortable to drive a buggy.
it's funny because you sometimes hear drivers talk about how comfortable certain buggies are, and on the one hand, gluttony feels like the type that would be comfortable because it's so big, but I gotta think that probably laying on a plank of wood is probably not super comfortable. Though there's enough room in there, you could probably put blankets in and throw in a pillow and make it a more comfortable ride if you really wanted to and wanted to add more weight.
It's absolutely not comfortable. You might be right. I mean, I do have a yoga mat in there, but no.
Yeah.
It's just any time where you're laying down like that, moving across the ground, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to jostle you around a bit.
Yeah. So now Lewis, this is the end of Heat 5. So coming up next is Heat 6 with Spirit C and Pica A, and then SDC's first women's heat, the CIAB SDC B heat, which
It's a fun heat.
Yeah, I'll have you talk a little bit more about if you have time when we get there. But it's probably. It might be the most exciting heat of Raceday 2024. It's certainly one of them.
I personally think so. Yeah, I think it really was.
But so now
that was a pretty cool race.
But so now you're a heat you're a heat out in the truck. I'm sure you've been doing whatever secret sauce SDC has to make their buggies go super fast. It is a B team, but I believe the driver for your B team. Was the driver from I forget which one of your drivers. I think the driver from your B team had like the most rolls of any driver at rolls that year, or one
yes, that's correct.
Somewhere up there. So she was new, but she was super experienced both in Vice and just on the course from that year.
She was more experienced than many veteran drivers for sure.
Yeah.
So now her name is Elizabeth. She's an excellent driver. At the beginning of 2024, she was the only driver we had on the team. And we were basically in a position like, oh gosh, we better make sure Elizabeth is good and it's, safe and gets around the course without any issues. Otherwise we're toast, right? Otherwise our team is gone.
Yep.
Because we wouldn't be able to get any drivers.
Yeah.
So she was the key to keeping us around after our really tough DQ year.
Yeah.
And yeah, she rolled a ton, and I think she had like 80 rolls across the year. And
I'm actually checking right now what's her roll count across all the buggies she drove.
I think
she had
60
something
in the fall?
She had 39 in the fall,
39,
and then
that's
just in Vice she had 30 in the spring.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I remember being 60, something above 60.
Oh man. So now,
so tons of rolls.
So now, presumably, this heat's going on. You're busy in the truck, so you're not watching. I would aside from whatever stream you have going on in the truck, you're probably not really focused on this one, other than making sure that they've cleared the course. They cleared the chute cleanly so that your heat is going to be on schedule. But are you loading your driver now? Are you Like you're attaching the wheel. Like what are you doing right now as you get ready in the truck? Anything special that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of that stuff stays pretty, under wraps for most teams.
Yeah,
But one thing I can say is we like to everything that we like to do it without rushing.
yeah.
Um, we like to load the drivers fairly early, get them in there comfortably, make sure we double check all of the safety equipment because, at the end of the day, race day is the most dangerous day of rolls because you're going super fast, speeds that you never really get to practice during rolls because it's warmer. Um, so, like I said, we just take it nice and easy. At this point, we've practiced everything quite often. All of our mechanics know exactly what they're doing, and we honestly just act on autopilot.
That's
So
I mean,
we
I always find it super impressive with SDC. You can basically, I mean, SDC has things down to a science where like you can time, you can set your watch to when they get the buggy out, when they put it down. Like it's so exact. It's always super impressive. I know back in my day when I was in the truck, like I mean, we AEPI. I'm an alum of AEPI. AEPI had a history of 5 second DQs for no particular reason. We weren't doing anything special with wheels. We would have the driver loaded way in advance, like the heat before she'd already be in there, and we just always would mistime how long it would take to get out of the truck because the buggy. Especially back in my day with camo, the buggy's heavy and requires several people to lift it, and people aren't used to the ramp at the back of the truck. And it did. I think one year, like someone forgot to do. I forget what it was, but someone forgot to do something, and like we had to bring it. We started to bring it out, had to bring it back in the truck, then had to bring it back out. It was a whole thing, but it's so impressive how SDC has things down so cleanly with that process that is not as easy as you would think if it's just like pick up the driver, lift them, move them out. This shot here of Pika, unfortunately, Pika fails drops. I guess that was the starting line, but I mean, so Ale, from your perspective as a sweepstakes chair, I mean, you can see here. I don't know. I mean, I guess this is somewhat out of your hands. This is more the head judge and the assistant head judge. You can see Bethany Bauer there as the assistant head judge checking making sure that the buggy stops in time. And unfortunately for Pika, they didn't. But from your perspective, like, I mean, you probably deal with very angry chairs when things like this happen. I mean, obviously, to be a sweepstakes chair, you have to have a good relationship with all the teams, and hopefully they respect you. And I mean, something like that, there's not really much that they can do about it because it is what it is. Like if you don't stop before the line, you don't stop before the line. But is it like what are you going through? Are there do teams come to you and try to say like, oh, I mean, for drops, like, oh, I don't even know what excuses you could give, but are these things that you weigh, or do you really kind of pass this off to the head judge and the assistant head judge at that point?
I think it depends really on what happens. Um, I think I actually have no idea really what's going on when they're doing drops. We're generally trying to find where are the mechanics for the next heats or who actually won like the BAA like lottery bid, whatever you want to call it. Trying to make sure that these people get in the truck and are not jumping on it as we're leaving, talking to the advisors. But kind of really don't know what's going on as drops actually happen. I think that the anger generally arrives when they find out that they get DQ'd for other reasons.
Yeah.
I think the drops is so obvious. There's honestly only been 1 year where it was actually a CIA driver. Their name is Jazz, and they failed drops, and they actually did file a petition to get a reroll because they found out that they had a bottle cap, like a metal bottle cap in their brakes that they found when they actually went to do pool test. And this was actually my safety chair year. So this was Raceday 2023.
Okay.
But the anger I guess the anger does arrive kind of later when we get to chairman and the judges have already left. The judges are not there when we tell the teams who has been DQ'd. And then generally some arguing, we always try to tell them like, this is the head judge's decision. We advise, but it's fine. Not our choice, not our decision. This is how it's going to be. I think one of the big ones we had was, again, Race Day 2023, still with CIA,
Yeah.
where it was their A team. I think it was their men's or women's. Actually, I think it was their men's team or women's team. I can't remember at the moment. Where the driver did go on the I guess on the lines,
Yeah.
and they did get viewed. So it happens. I actually got a call that day when I was on stage for awards. Pretty angry call. Then all got resolved. But there are these things that happen, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
gotta get used to it.
So now, Lewis. So this is the
Yeah.
CAB SDCB. Obviously, the two buggies in the same shot right now. It gets even closer as we go. Are you in the follow truck for this one, or are you watching from the top of the hill, or where
No,
are
I was at the
you?
top of the hill watching.
Okay.
Yep.
And
I
so,
was at the top of the hill. We all run up and run behind the follow car and get to the top of the hill. We're all watching. It was a bunch of SEC people and a bunch of CIA people at the top of the hill, crowded watching, and we're all cheering and excited about it.
so
And at this point, sorry.
No, I was going to say. So, did you have expectations of where you guys would be versus CIAB coming into this heat? Like, was the race turning out how you expected, at least initially? And then, obviously, on the back hills, it gets super exciting the rest of the way here.
So yeah, actually for me, this is exactly what I expected to happen. I remember during heat selection, I was there. Um, we were getting towards the end of heat selection. Everybody was tired. Everybody wanted to go home. And CIA didn't like that their B team and their C team for the women were next to each other. They had them seated in this, subsequent heats.
Mhm.
And CIA wanted to get it changed. And so they changed it to, whatever it was. They put CIA in this heat with SDCB. And I remember sitting there feeling like, oh no, these teams are very close. Like, I knew the times from the front hills, I knew the times through the free roll, and I knew that those times were within a second of each other.
Yeah.
And, I definitely felt anxious about the shoot turn. I was a little worried that, Kingfisher and Vice were going to, get in a little bit of a tangle there. But, we got very fortunate that they didn't. And this ended up being just a very close race. That's very exciting to watch, obviously. Like, you see it here, like, these girls are neck and neck with each other the whole way through, which is a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah.
CIA did end up pulling it in the end, but, I think for us, it was just a really cool moment to be a part of that race without any injuries or anything like that.
Exactly. Honestly, that's like the ideal. When people will talk about how Buggy is it's basically a time trial. So, like, if you're doing it a time trial, why do you have multiple buggies in the same heat? Why not just run one at a time? Outside of the issues of there's only a certain amount of time in the day, and if you did one buggy at a time, you'd run out of time pretty quickly. When you get a heat like this, it's so much more exciting to watch as a spectator. I'm imagining from a pusher perspective, like, you're probably pushing faster when you've got another buggy right to your side, right? Like, just that added adrenaline just gives you that extra oomph that probably gives you an extra second or two on your overall time. And it's just like, and that's the ideal scenario because it's clean. The buggies are far enough apart where they're not interfering with each other. They can each take their own line normally, but yet you have the back hills where it's just like, all right, bam, you're just watching these two dynamos go neck and neck, battling back and forth. You saw CIA catch SDC on Hill 3, SDC start to pull ahead on Hill 4, CIA come back on Hill 5. I mean, that's the adrenaline, that's the excitement, that's the energy that you love to see out of Buggy.
Yeah, 100%. This race ended up perfectly. We got very lucky, and it was a very cool thing to be a part of. Yeah, and I think you're definitely right. Pushers definitely do push fast when the race is a little bit closer. There's a little bit of that extra little click there that gets you going.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that race right there, like, you can see it on the times. I mean, both of those times that both teams ran were very fast. I think they were both top four. I'm pretty sure our women got fourth.
Yep,
I think that's right. And I think they were third.
Yep.
Third and fourth in the same heat. Like, that's pretty crazy to think about. You know what I mean?
It is.
And, it's certainly, the fact that they were right next to each other definitely helped them run a little faster, give them that extra maybe half second or so.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So this heat, this SIGEP B Fringe A, is the only heat that really has we're about to see a spin, to the extent that you can call it a spin, and it's not your usual one because it doesn't happen in the chute. I don't know, and Ale, you may know the answer, you may not know the answer, and even if you know the answer, you may not be able to share the answer. So you can see here Hydra spins out. I'm assuming it was some sort of again, kind of that bottle cap sort of scenario where there's something in the road that caused the spin. We'll see Siget B gets a re-roll later. So it seems like it's something that's not just the fault of the buggy. In fact, this heat gets re-rolled later because you'll see Fringe with Blue Shift slowing to a stop as they approach the transition flag. I mean this. I would imagine, Ale, from your perspective on this one, this is a bit of your nightmare scenario, I would think, because one, a buggy has spun out. Two, it slammed up against the curb. Luckily, it went tail first and not a. I say slammed. It wasn't that hard of a hit, and it's part of the thing where the driver is braking, and that's what's causing the buggy to spin. But like, what's going through your mind now? Are you already? I mean, I think we can see you in the with the lead truck right now with the stop flaggers. Are you now like radioing back like, okay, we got to move these times? Like, what are you doing, snapping into action here?
Yeah, I guess the first thing in this case, since both buggies stopped, and it was because the driver saw something on the course or felt something under the wheel. I can't exactly remember, and so decided to brake. And it was, from a judge perspective, really kind of an easy call to give a re-roll. There were some other re-rolls where I remember that Bethany and Josie were just having a hard time deciding. This was kind of one of those where it was easy. And I actually think, I am not 100% sure, but I do think that I did extract the driver, actually the Fringe A driver, because she did want to get out.
Yeah.
And obviously their people are in the follow truck, so they're running all the way down from basically like almost the end of hill 2.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what's going on. I think the priority is always the driver, even as chairman. Maybe it's a little bit of kind of that safety chair kind of instinct kind of kicking back in. The priority is the driver, and then as soon as we get back, I do need to hear word from Bethany and Josie at the time, or whoever the judges are, whether they want to reroll or not, so that we can slot them in the schedule. We do actually generally allow for like 3 rerolls, about 2 to 3, I guess, that year. In our master schedule, we call it, so that we already have kind of the space for that. And definitely, this was one of the heats that got immediate priority when it came to that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the delay, I mentioned this before when I was talking to Lewis, but the delay because of that spin and unloading the drivers and bringing them back with the trucks was, I think, almost exactly 8 minutes. So it's not in this particular cut of the heat, but if you watch the full broadcast, DG actually comes out to the line here thinking it was their heat, because the original schedule, their time would have been the time of this heat, but everything got pushed back by 1. So there was a bit of confusion there. And so you can just see how like teams plan things around the original schedule. So when something happens, it can throw things off. It can cause a bit of chaos. Luckily for DG, I think they were pretty good sports about it. They kind of laughed it off, and they were back out the next heat, putting up a pretty solid time. In fact, earning their first ever trophy for the races. Speaking of, let me see if this works. I'm going to throw this on. Is this going to show up? Let's find out. Yeah. Okay. They're right after the women's heats, and we're gonna have a very quick pause of the races to do a little bit of trivia about 2024. The questions are probably pretty easy, but I'm throwing up the QR code if you want to join the trivia now. Feel free to scan the code or follow the instructions, and you can get on that. We'll try it. I don't know how well it's gonna work, but we're gonna see. We're definitely gonna. Again, this is a bit of an informal thing, so we're trying it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So let me ask Ale. I don't know. I mean, do you have any? Like I've asked you some specific questions and kind of stuff about more of the sweepstakes side, but obviously you're a buggy participant also. Like, you're a fan of the sport. You've been involved for several years now. I don't know if there. I'll open the general floor if there's any specific stories you have from 2024 or anything from even 2023 or anything you're excited about this year. Just open the floor to you to give you a chance to share some of those.
I mean, exciting story. I think 2023 was exciting, maybe in the wrong way. So maybe not touch too much on that.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
again. This is a 2024 rewatch, so we can focus on 2024 and beyond.
but I mean, I don't know. I think last year was so hectic. It was a hard year in general from the perspective just of like I had a lot of things to do. But I'm actually excited to finally be able to enjoy Buggy like beyond actually doing things around sweepstakes. It is kind of fun now to be able to go out to roles and do things that aren't like yelling at people or telling people what to do. It's great that I don't have to go up at 4:45 a.m. anymore. That's like a big plus. I think it's been probably one of the things that I've been enjoying the most about not being on sweepstakes. And then I think for this year, I've never actually had carnival. I kind of, I guess, did my freshman year, but I was pushing both days for DG at the time. And since it was kind of the first year, it was taken very seriously. So that was kind of it. And then this year, I'm gonna be pushing again, which should be fun. But definitely want to try to enjoy Carnival. Actually, enjoy watching around. Actually, watching the races. Because contrary to what many people may say, it is the follow truck nor the lead truck are the best view on the course. I think that's probably somewhere else around the course.
I,
So that
I
would be fun.
definitely think now that the jumbotrons are out there and it's a one of the things I was gonna mention here on the this year for 2025 for the first time since COVID, lane 3 will be open again. I don't think we're gonna have 3 buggy heats this year because one, I don't think we need it for the time, and two, because of the lack of rolls in the spring, I think just for safety reasons, they're probably going to stick with 2 buggy heats. But it's one of those things. I'm curious if teams are going to choose lane 3 this year. I don't know what the condition of lane 3 is, but it's one of those things where with buggy and with college stuff in general, because you have complete turnover within 4 years. It's like once you've done something some way for a couple of years, it just kind of becomes the way things have always been done. So there was a time back in my day when we didn't have jumbotrons on the course. And so for me, there was one year, as buggy chair for AEPI, I was in the follow truck, and thankfully AEPI was the slowest of the teams. So I could see my buggy the entire way around from the follow truck. It was the best seat in the house then. But now you get a much better view from either the chute or the top of the hill because you can watch the whole race on the jumbotron.
Ryan, I think we need a back in my day little like splash sort of thing, just like a stamp that we can put up every time.
I'll have to do that for the next one of these. So Ale, so I don't know if you still are a member of DG or if you were a member of DG, but obviously as sweepstakes chair, you can't root for any particular team. But secretly in your heart, were you pro DG here, or did you have a team where you're like, I love the relationship I've had with this team this year. I really hope they do well, even if it's not necessarily win.
I think it's always nice to see, especially maybe the teams that are struggling. I am still a member of DG. I was actually inactive at the time. I now am again a member. Will not be pushing for them, however, trying to keep kind of those two lives a little bit separate. Um, but I think it's just always nice to see the teams that maybe were struggling in the past. I mean, we all know that the CIAs, the SDCs, the Spirits will do well. I think it's always more about the teams that maybe were having a hard time getting people out. We're having a hard time getting like their drivers to, learn the course, especially when they had new drivers. SAE was having other troubles at the time. So seeing all these teams, including DG, doing well and winning, and I think that like that's always great. Especially since a lot of the time being part of sweepstakes and especially as chairman, you're there helping people figure out like how to do things or helping teams that are struggling figure out how to fix things and get to race day. Like Pike at the time was having some issues with like a fitting on one of their drivers, and so like taking the time to go with their chairman and their driver to move around in a way, kind of there are touchpoint points inside to make it so that they could successfully pass capes, and then seeing them get to race day, and actually do things is always great. And again, that goes for DG last year, I think SAE as well. They kind of bounced back pretty greatly since they did have, say, a little bit of an accident very close to race day, which kind of hurt their buggy at the time, and so they had to, let's say, give Barbie a nose job, which I think Lewis you helped out with, right?
Yeah, I did do that.
And I gotta
Yeah,
say,
so Eric was the. Sorry.
no, I guess I was gonna say it's so impressive that I mean that they managed to get Barbie repaired like over the course of a week and get it back out for race day. Like that was really impressive.
Yeah, because that
Yeah,
happened
it
the weekend
was.
before.
We showed him some tricks that made it pretty easy to fix it up. It actually wasn't as damaged as you might have thought.
By the way, I didn't mention this. We do have another special guest here who has joined us, Jazz. I should have introduced you before this heat because this was CIAA women's who went on to win this, and I'm curious because the last heat coming up here will be SDCA against Apex A, so I kind of want to hear Lewis's thoughts about this too. But I want to get you in here. First of all, say hi and introduce yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Julia. You can also call me Jazz. I am currently CIA's head driver, and last year I was CIA assistant head driver. I've been driving for a hot minute.
Well, welcome to the broadcast. I want to get your thoughts, but I want to turn it back over to Lewis here just quickly because this is the SDCA heat. So again, we kind of talked about SDCB, getting ready in the truck beforehand. Obviously, this is the big one. You're not expecting your B team to win. I don't know if you had expectations for your women's A team winning. I know there are definitely some alums, some SDC alums, some other alums who said, SDC, we're going to win the women's by like 10 seconds. I don't think they expected CIA to come out as strong as they did. So kudos to CIA for that, shaving, I think, 6 seconds off of their 2023 time. But so, like, what's going through your mind here? I don't know if you're in the follow truck or if you're going to be catching along with, and waiting with the team at the top of the hill. But like, what are your expectations going into this heat? What are you thinking as they're going uphill one and pushing here, and then as we go through the race?
Yeah, so I think in a normal year for SDC, obviously the goal is always 100%, 1,000% of the time. We want nothing but to win the race, right? That was always the goal. That's always what we did, and we were very proud of our win streak that lasted for a decade or more. This past year, Race Day 2024, was a little different. We obviously wanted to win, and we were doing everything we could to win. But at some level, I think all of the mechanics and all the people who had been there through that really hard time during the DQ time, we were just so happy to see us pushing it all. Like the fact that we had an A team going and our girls were running really fast, and we knew that our buggies were, in contention to get trophies. I think we just felt so happy to even get to that point. At the beginning of the year, we had no idea if we were even going to be able to make it to race day at all. We didn't know if Bane was going to pass capes. It was just, there were so many uncertainties going in that expectations honestly were not that high from the student perspective.
Yeah.
And, we went, we were under 235, which definitely felt really good on the women's side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we were super happy with the result. And kudos to CIA for their wins. They deserved every bit of them. They had built the juggernaut of a team, and they had done it the right way with a really great culture. And, I think in some ways I am almost happy that they won it because they deserved it so much. And, going into this year, I think it's going to be another really great race. Obviously, I know Jazz is excited for that. So.
and now Jazz, so you... Like you said, you were assistant head driver last year. I believe you drove Equinox, which was women's C. I don't remember on the men's side. I guess we'll see when that pops up. So you're not in the buggy for CIAA. Are you watching from the top of the hill? Like what are you doing? And then when you're watching SDC come up here, like you have that 230 in the bank or the 231 in the bank. Like what's going through your head as you're watching this, if you're watching this, or are you busy getting ready for your next heat or something?
Well, there's a break after women's before men, so I'm not occupied doing anything, so I was definitely watching this. And I think another reason is that I drove for CIA Women's A in 2023.
Okay.
And if you remember 2023, uh, on prelims we had a pretty large lead, but then during finals, Spirit gained 6 seconds in the biggest upset I've ever seen. Like, that was super impressive. So I was watching Women's A pretty closely because I knew that we were very good, but I was also, understandably nervous about SDC. I
Yeah.
remember watching very closely, and after we got our women's time and it was faster than the year before, I was like, is that a team record? Because I vaguely remember 232 or something like that being a team record. I was like, it might have been tied for a team record, but I couldn't remember because I think the record's from 2016.
Well, the good news is, yeah, the CIA did in fact set team records for pretty much all of their teams in 2024, or at least all their A and B teams.
I believe we set 7 team records last year.
That's
So
that's very possible.
yeah. But at the time, because I couldn't remember the time off the top of my head, I wasn't sure. And then after that, it was just like kind of nervously waiting to see if, like for the shoe to drop, right? Like, how well is SDC gonna do? Are there any rumors of DQs? I do remember that there was a rumor of a transition DQ, and people were quite nervous. But somebody got a photo of the pusher as she was pushing off, and her toe was in the line by like an inch. And we were so excited when we got that picture.
I always love.
So there was.
It's so random, but there are all these like things that have these random things that have happened in Buggy history, and like there was a stretch of one year like where I forget I think it's a KDR Buggy, like the guy gives a shove and the handlebar breaks, and somehow someone snapped the picture as the shove was happening and the handlebar breaks. It's like, how do you, like, it's happened like one time. How did you manage to get how were you in that spot to get that photo? And so it's this sort of thing. It's like the one where there's a possible transition violation. What are the odds that someone is going to be there to snap that exact photo to show, like, hey, we're good? It's always...
You have so many cameras around the course now, and they can take pictures so fast.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I've gotten some of my crazy ones. Yeah.
I don't think I knew that there was a transition DQ potential there. I don't remember that, but I'm sure it's possible. Yeah. I know that was a crazy race because it was very close.
Yeah, we did. I think we did get it filed on our end. I feel like everyone, which is a good thing, I think, from the sweepstakes side. Obviously, we can't sit there and rewatch the whole of Raceday. So it's like always good that people are in a way incentivized to kind of report what they see. I do think that there was something there, but it ended up being cleared. I do remember, as Jess said, that it was kind of tight. It wasn't like a shove about like 10 feet before the line, if you know what I mean.
I think for us, like, when we heard about it, we were like, oh no, we're not going to know for sure unless, until like later in the day because of footage review. That typically takes some time. And we were asking the pusher and she was like, not completely certain. So when we got our hands on the picture, like, 10-20 minutes later, it was just like pure excitement.
By the way,
we were...
I was going to say,
quite nervously watching SDC.
I was going to say, I just love the shot of the Fringe A Hill 3 pusher in shorts and a tank top and a beanie, because it's like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty cold out even though you're running.
Oh, it was freezing. That was a cold race day.
Yeah, and it's
there's a funny picture. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's such a contrast from the year before where it was so warm that like the drivers had to be fanned off and they had to remove the hatches like before the race and after the race just to make sure that drivers could breathe inside the buggies and not overheat.
Oh yeah, we were doing drops without the hatch. If the teams wanted to, we were doing drops without the hatch because drivers just couldn't bear to be inside.
It's wild how Pittsburgh weather just will do that from year to year. Hopefully this year we just have perfect weather with no rain, just sunny 60s 70s, like that'd be perfect.
Feel like 60s, 70s, you're gonna be cooked alive in that buggy with the carbon fiber insulation in the sun. Actually,
All right, well how about 60s and cloudy?
yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll compromise. So we'll get to. I think there's one more I'm trying to think when to do this very brief trivia because there's going to be one more exhibition after this before the men's heats. But I'm curious. Well, you know what? Maybe we'll talk about it more in the men's heats, Jazz, about what it's like to drive and maybe some stories that you have. I know Ale mentioned the bottle cap incident from 2023, I believe. Right, that was 2023.
Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah, so what that was like, and I know you mentioned another story that you have from driving. I think during 2024's race day, which sounds like maybe you're just a magnet for random debris on the course. But so we'll you know what? I'll pause. Let me pause it here. We'll do Atlas after the trivia, and then we'll do Atlas and then the men's races and the final exhibitions. So let me kick it over here quickly to this trivia thing. Hopefully, let's see if this works. All right, I have switched scenes. I am a newbie to OBS, and this is the first time I've ever tried scenes before. So we have this trivia thing. It's been up for a while. We've got a couple of people in so far, but I'll leave this up for another 30 seconds or so. If you want to participate in the trivia, again, it's very short. It's a 5-question trivia. Well, it's 6 questions, but the 6th is a looking forward question. But it's all about 2024. And yeah, we'll play this and have some fun. And while I'm here, I do want to thank Ale, Lewis, and Jazz for joining. It's awesome that you guys are willing to come on and share stories and talk about stuff. Again, it's an informal thing. If you guys need to jump at any point, feel free to head out. But we'd love to keep you on for as long as you would like to stay on. And again, we've still got the men's heats to go. But it's definitely, so far, and from what I've heard from people watching, this is the best one of these we've done so far. So I want to thank you for being willing to answer my questions and kind of talk about 2024 and the upcoming stuff. So with that, let me do this, and I'm going to press start, and I believe there's still going to be a code if you want to join while this is ongoing. But we're going to get started with the trivia. The first question was, who was sweepstakes chair for Race Day 2024? Is it Ale Bonassini, Elena Harley, Laura Whitwick, or Stacy Gardner? Hopefully, this one should be easy for everyone. But just in case, it was Ale. This is maybe my favorite photo that CMU took of award ceremony, which is just all of sweepstakes, but Ale in the front there. She is the first person to be a core sweepstakes committee member for back-to-back race days, not including 2020 when there wasn't a race day, since Chris Shellhammer back in 2010, 2011. The leaderboard here, it looks like Matt is in the lead by 10 points. Question 2. Which team won Queen of the Hill in 2024? Was it SDCA, CIAA, SDCB, or CIAB? This is probably the toughest question of the set, but the correct answer is SDCB. SDC B's Erin Magid. I hope that's how to pronounce her name. Although, Lewis, you can tell me if it's pronounced differently.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
She earned Queen of the Hill with a 21.03 second Hill 1. She's the first B team pusher to earn Queen of the Hill honors since at least 2006, which is when our records formally begin. But as far as I know, she's the first person to ever win from a B team.
Yeah, she sandbagged for race day. We didn't know she was that fast.
And of course, it's the SDC alums who get that one right. Question 3 is... CIA's victory in the men's races, spoiler alert, was their second men's win ever. When did CIA win its first men's race? 1981, 1991, 2001, or 2011? The correct answer, of course, 1981 with Black Magic on a Sunday afternoon race day after races were canceled on Friday and Saturday.
If only I had joined in and wasn't eating lunch.
Oh, sorry, Ben. You missed out. The next question. Lewis still in the lead here. The next question. Which organization won its first ever racing trophy in 2024? Was it Apex, DG, RoboBuggy, or SAE? And the correct answer is DG. With 6th place in the women's races, they earned their first ever racing trophy in just their 3rd year of buggy participation, which is really quite outstanding. There's been very few organizations in history that have managed a podium in within their first 3 years. The last 2024 question is about design competition. The 2024 design competition winner was unique for which of the following reasons? Did it set a record for most consecutive design wins? Was it a robotic buggy? Did it not roll on race day? Or is it that there was no 2024 design competition winner? The correct answer is SDC's Lust winning the 2024 design competition, but it didn't compete on race day. The sweepstakes and the chairs voted to make an exemption for Lust. It won design comp, SDC's first design win since Rage in 1996. For those of you around who remember Rage more recently, it's older than most people today. I guess most buggy people. Probably everyone currently participating in buggy, but it's an old man. We expect to see, I guess it says we expect to see it. That would be Lust we expect to see for Raceday 25, not Rage. I do believe Rage is officially retired and has been for several years.
Lust will be out there this year.
So with that, it looks like Jeremy is the winner of this trivia, but there is one last question that I will try not to... I got to make sure that it's not sharing the actual responses because I don't want to spoil it, but we'll do this. It's an open-ended question, and it's which organization do you think will win the most first-place racing trophies this year? You can choose. You can choose as many as you want. This is just my way of soliciting predictions for 2025. And I am not going to share the responses here, so feel free to be biased. But let me do this just to make sure, because I don't know how this works. So I'm going to switch the scene back to this one so that you guys can say whatever you want to say. And then I will go to next. I will end the quiz. And then just quickly go back to scene 3. 3rd place, Lewis. 2nd place, Matt. And 1st place, Jeremy. Congratulations to Jeremy. You won. So with that, we will send this back to the races. And here is Atlas with their exhibition right before the men's races. Thanks for playing this one. Keep in mind, if you come to Carnival this year and you come to the Buggy Bash, there will be a much bigger trivia, not 2024 related, but just overall trivia. It's probably 20 questions or so. It will be once again in Shats this year. We tried to see if we could get somewhere else on campus, but Schatz was the end result. We should have some good food this year. There should be some good drinks this year. There will be trivia. There will be a live live finals lead truck auction. It'll be a good time, and that's, I believe, at 7 p.m. on Friday night. You can check the full carnival schedule, the Buggy carnival schedule, on cmubuggy.org/raceday. Rob will hopefully not get mad at me for saying that. I hope that is able to be public, but if not, he'll yell at me. I think we're still putting in final updates. The big thing, I guess, while I have Buggy people on this or watching this, the big change in locations this year is design competition is no longer going to be in the UC gym. Now that the Highmark Center is open, the Buggy Showcase and Design Competition will actually be in the Highmark Center gym. It's the gym that's right next to... It's the gym that you can see from the outside if you're on the course, but it's technically the second floor, but depending on which way you enter the building, you're either on that floor or you have to walk upstairs. So just remember, it's the one that you can see. But there will be more... There will be... directions on the cmubuggy.org/raceday page. There should also be signs at the Highmark Center when we're there. The other events, of course, we've got the welcome dinner at Cappy's again in Shadyside on Walnut Street. We've got the history of Buggy at the Tom Woods History of Buggy, focusing on older history. We'll also have a presentation during the Buggy Showcase, kind of some newer history stuff, spotlighting each of the currently participating teams. But that'll be during design competition. The History of Buggy is from 4 to 5 p.m. on Friday at the CUC Studio Theater. And then award ceremony is on Saturday. So the full schedule, cmubuggy.org/raceday. Enjoy that. And make your plans to come to Pittsburgh if you haven't already. And then the last thing for people who are coming in, if you're an alum, we do need volunteers still for race day. If you're willing to, take a shift sitting at our table for a heat, or for some races, or like help set up or tear down at the end of the day. We don't need a lot of people, but we do need at least a couple of people. So if you are able to, cmubuggy.org/volunteer. You can sign up for a shift because we could definitely use the help. That's all of my plugs for now. I will turn back to 2024's races as we see Atlas, the other robotic buggy. This is their new build for 2024 Monaco. They were one of only, I believe, three new buggies. It was either 3 or 4 new buggies to hit to race on race day, and they did it impressively with only 2 pushers, 1 pusher for the front hills and 1 pusher for the back hills, which, I realize the buggy is a lot lighter than one that's driven by an actual person, but oof, that's rough. I don't envy the pushers who have to push an entire back hills. I can barely walk up the entire back hills. So all right. So now that we've touched on this trivia and the women's heats, as we turn our attention to the men's, I'm gonna bring in Jazz here for a minute. So obviously we're watching a robotic buggy right now, but that is not most buggies. You are a driver. You've been a driver for several years now. Well, first of all, let me ask, do you know what buggy you're going to be driving for this year? And do you know what team, or has that not been decided yet as we still figure out times and train up to race day?
Team selection definitely has not been decided yet. As for buggy selection, I think so this is not 1000% final, but it looks to be Goldfinch. Shout out Goldfinch. Feedback.
Now, out of all of the CIA buggies that you've driven in the past, not necessarily for race day, but even rolls, do you have a favorite, or do you have a least favorite, or are you not willing to share because it's going to make CIA feel bad?
Um, so I drove Equinox for 3 years. I really like that buggy. Although she is our current oldest buggy, which does mean that she is starting to show her age. The mechanics, unfortunately, do not very much like her. They find her very finicky and hard to mechanic. So I hear a lot of Equinox slander, but I am like number one Equinox defender. I like that buggy a lot.
Now, would we heard from Lewis before saying that Gluttony, which is the buggy that he has driven, is not at all comfortable. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable would you say Equinox is, and how comfortable would you say Goldfinch is?
So I want to caveat this by saying I don't think this is by any means representative, given the fact that I can stay in the buggies for over an hour without like getting numb or getting too uncomfortable. So I don't think I should be speaking on behalf of all drivers from all teams. But I would say Equinox is like a 7 and Goldfinch is like a 5.
Okay. Is Equinox bigger? Like, or is it roomier?
No, she is
Really?
not. She's actually smaller.
Interesting.
But she has a tiny bit she's a little bit taller in the head area. So
Okay.
that makes her a little bit more comfortable for me personally.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's very interesting. I kind of always assumed that the bigger the buggy was, the better, the more comfortable it was. And then there's an episode of again the Buggy podcast from this year talking to the 2001 Fringe team, and they were talking about how one of the design considerations when they made Brazen is that they actually didn't want it to be roomy at all. They wanted it to be basically form-fitting to the driver, because they had a crash during a push practice the year prior where they thought that part of the reason that the crash was as bad as it was is because the driver basically slid forward when she unfortunately impacted a car that was parked on the side of the road. The driver was okay, but she was stuck in there, and the fire department had to come and basically they used not the jaws of life, but they used something that they shouldn't have used when all they needed was a screwdriver to get her out. But they basically destroyed the buggy, so French had to rebuild that one. But they said for 2001, when they were building Brazen, they wanted something where the driver was basically snug in there, so that she basically wouldn't budge in the event of an incident. Thankfully, Brazen never had an incident and rolled as recently as 2022. But it is a small buggy as opposed to something bigger. Maybe not as big as Gluttony, but a bigger buggy that can accommodate more drivers. Part of the problem with Brazen as a loaner buggy is you need to be very small to fit into that one, which makes it a little tough to find drivers. When a buggy, like we're watching now, Phoenix for Apex, is pretty big and can accommodate a lot of drivers, I would imagine. So Jazz, I hinted at this before, but I know. I guess we could wait until your men's heat, if it relates to your men's heat. That is coming up. Let's see, when is that heat? That heat is heat 4. But do you have any particular stories, or either from 2024 or otherwise, from driving? From, I don't know if you ever pushed a buggy. If you have any special CIA stories, or just buggy stories in general that you want to tell.
Actually, well, to start actually with less of a story but more of a point on the buggy size. I've driven Kingfisher a couple times too this year. And Kingfisher is CIA's roomiest buggy. And while I don't slide around because the ropes can prevent that, does put more tension on my shoulders because the ropes are holding me in place instead of the buggy shell holding me in place.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that, but yeah, it's probably easier on you if it's just the buggy, so like you don't have to worry about something else putting pressure on your body.
Well, you have to have the ropes regardless,
Well,
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
but
it's a little bit more comfortable, I would
yeah.
say. As for stories, um,
And that's not to put
hmm,
pressure on you. If you don't have any stories right now, we can wait and see as things come up if they spark your memory. It's an open question as well for Lewis or Ale, and especially for you guys as well. If there's anything that you want to talk about that I haven't asked about, feel free to jump in and chime in with whatever you want to talk about. Or if you have
yeah,
questions about how things happened back in the day, I'm happy to answer those questions too.
I can't think of any stories right now, but I do remember reading your 100 Years of Buggy, so you definitely have a lot of cool stories.
Well, thank you. I have to be honest. I was not around for most of those. Though we do have some alums who have seen a fair share of those. It does make me a little sad to think, and this will come up this year, I'm sure at Race Day. But like my first year of Buggy probably happened before several of the current students were alive, and I don't feel like I'm that old, but apparently I am. So, uh, it's one of those things. But I came up in the modern era of Buggy, so it still looks like the same sport to me. Whereas if you came around in the 70s or the 80s, things have changed a whole lot since then. For me, it's just it's basically teams have gotten better, and AEPI still isn't on the course. Although I was hoping this was going to be the year, but my understanding is it's probably not going to be this year. I think they ran out of time, and again with the weather problems this year, it's looking like it'll probably be next year before they reach the course. But hopefully they'll be back again. I keep trying every year, so one day I'll
Yeah,
get them.
they've got the buggy. They need the driver and they need the pushers and the mechanics behind it. But the
Yeah.
buggy's ready.
Well, that's good to hear. And I know they've been talking about, similar to Lewis, what you were saying earlier about gluttony. Like, I think their hope, at least what they expressed to me last year, is they want to be able to build a buggy that can fit one of their brothers to drive. Probably not the same type of build that gluttony would be. I think they're looking to do a more traditional looking buggy, just a bigger one. But Kamikaze is still, for all its problems, we built it pretty big, so it can house a larger than normal driver. If not, I still couldn't fit in Kamikaze, but we did have a buggy chair one year who could.
Yeah, Kamikaze is a great buggy. That thing would be fine going around the course for sure. Um, if AEPI is interested in a buggy the size of brothers to drive, that has been done before. I don't know what fraternity, but there was a buggy named Juggernaut in the 90s that was also made of wood. It looked less like a coffin than mine, but same idea.
Or you could just recruit a shorter brother.
This
That's
Like,
is
I don't
also
want to say
true.
anything, but CMU, their chairman was a driver as well. Their current chairman, who is part of CMU, Dylan, he's awesome. He was a good driver. Now he
Yeah,
only
Dylan
and
was
drives
Dylan drove
professionally.
Jaeger, right?
Yeah, Dylan
Yeah, he
drove
did.
Jaeger. Now he only
And
drives
not
for quiz
Crate.
practice. Yeah,
yeah. That's
maybe they could find a buggy-sized brother.
they got to be able to. But one day, hopefully by next year, we'll see them back on the course. Because one, they're my alma mater, so like I'm always gonna root for API. But just as a buggy fan, it's always nice to get more teams on the course. And that's why Lewis was talking about it before, but it's so exciting to see this year so far with rolls. Like you've got SIGEP back with 3 buggies rolling for the first time in quite a while. SAE has been out both days so far in the spring. Again, We've only had 2 days of rolls in the spring, but they've been out both times. Signu was out, I think, with both Jaeger and Crate. DG's back out. I think DG built this year as well. I don't think that buggy is going to roll on race day. I think they're going to be using Insight again, but the fact that they did roll is exciting. We see here the problem that you get with pushers or mechanics who don't come out regularly. We watched as the person who dropped SAE's buggy as it hit the line ran up and then ran into the buggy to try and stop it, not realizing that the buggy was supposed to stop on its own, so they had to redrop SAE, redrop Barbie. So, but they completed that drop test.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, SAE and DG both started new builds this year. Both of them are not going to roll on this race day, but maybe in the future they will. I did help the DG girls a little bit with their build, and it looks pretty awesome. They did a great job with it. I don't know much about the SAE build though.
Yeah, and I think there's some either videos or photos or stuff floating around of the DG build process. If and when that buggy does race, hopefully next year, or if that buggy doesn't race, maybe they build again next year and race a new buggy, where that will be the first sorority built buggy to ever race. So that is a very exciting thing, and it's always from an organizational standpoint. One, there's always like it's good to pass down the knowledge of how to build and just the institutional knowledge of that, but there's so much energy that's created by building a new buggy. Like it gets the organization super excited because it's something that they played a part in, that they were involved with. So it gets them out. It gets them super excited. It gets the energy out there, and it oftentimes will propel the team to more recruitment in future years, better times, etc. Like, I mean, DG has great pushers right now. The only thing holding them back at all is the fact that they're using a fringe buggy from 2003. So if you build a modern day buggy like that they could easily be a top 3 team on women's and men's if they have a buggy like what we're seeing in this race with Jaeger. The possibilities are there.
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean,
say even.
oh, sorry,
I'm
Deuce, go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, nothing. I do see that buggy on a regular basis because it's in the basement of our house. But what I'm saying is that the shell is done. So I would be surprised if the buggy wouldn't roll, especially as the nice thing I think that's happening right now with DG is a lot of, I mean, they're chairmen, but also a lot of the people involved are actually not upperclassmen, or at least they're not seniors, which means that whoever is working on the build right now will maybe not work as much on the build next year, but will still be there for guidance. And then everyone that is currently involved is young, so it means that at least for the next couple of years, DG will probably be fine. And also, SAE, they've already done a decent amount of their layups for their shell. So I think they might be able to finish before their chairman from last year, Eric, he leaves. That's, I guess, his idea. Even if it doesn't roll on race day this year, which realistically it won't. But ideally, he would like to finish the build before he leaves, so that he can leave SAE with a build of his own, built around their actual driver from, I guess, their veteran driver from Race Day 2023, who did drive for like 4 to 5 years with SAE.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to build on Barsham's comment about a build. Like, even though Lust didn't roll last year and only did like a couple press practices, that build really was a huge part of keeping that team together, keeping SDC together. It gave a bunch of the mechanics a thing to rally around, thing to work towards together during the year. It helped keep momentum going, and continuously seeing the buggy get built up. I think it really did help us rejuvenate some of the excitement that we had lost, some of the the energy that we had sort of had sort of dwindled out for us. So I definitely agree that when in doubt, get building.
So that's great. So we saw in this heat, Jaeger was gaining on Fringe's Baltic as they approached the transition flag, so Jaeger hit the brakes and ends up getting a reroll that will show up later. Um, the I'm curious, Jazz, from your perspective. I don't know. Have you ever had to hit the brakes during a roll, as whether on race day or in practice, or have you? I don't know if you've ever had to do it, but like, what goes through your mind as you're doing it? Like, are you worried that the brakes aren't going to work? Are you worried you're going to spin? Are you like, is it just okay? I know I've done this every morning for drops, so like I trust the mechanics. I know how this is going to work. I hit the brakes. I'm going to come to a stop. We're all going to be good.
The last time I actually had to hit my brakes at all, like outside of drops or like some kind of safety test, was freshman year, and it's been so long that I don't really remember. I think I've been fortunate that on race day, I'm either the buggy in front or I am so far behind the buggy in front that I can't see them and I have no idea where they are.
That's always the goal. I think that's the safest way to do it. If it isn't the most entertaining thing in the world, I think that's the safest way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As we see here, this is Goldfinch, the buggy that you might be rolling in this year, as for CIA Men's B. Do you? I get my next question for you. Like the experience in the buggy. You know, I'm curious. I'm a little curious about two things. One, the CIA they run different size wheels. We see here they've got the larger wheels that I assume they typically run, but then we'll see for CIA later they run the smaller wheels for Kingfisher on the men's side. Do, and I think Equinox has the smaller wheels. Do you feel a difference when you're rolling between the larger wheels and the smaller wheels, if you've driven in both?
Um, so personally, I can't really tell a difference between the wheels because it definitely feels different to drive every buggy. Oh, shout out to Yo. Um, sorry, the pusher. He's one of our push captains this year. So I can't usually tell like how much of the difference in driving experience is specifically the wheel and how much of it is just each buggy being different because they all feel different. I can't distinctly say 10-inch versus 6-inch wheels feel different, and it's more like every buggy I've driven feels different.
Is each of the CIA buggies, and I don't know if you can answer this, but is each of the CIA buggies designed for one particular wheel type, or are they interchangeable?
Um, we did have a buggy some number of years ago. Icarus from 2014 was swappable, but the rest of them are all single wheel types.
Okay.
Actually, if you go to Race Day 2019, CIA had a role where they put one 6-inch wheel and one 10-inch wheel. But they put the 10-inch wheel on the outside. Sorry, on the inside during for the shoot turn, it was actually banked the wrong way. So it was really funny to watch. Shout out Rachel, she built that one. I think Jerry also worked a lot on that one, if I'm not mistaken. They're all awesome.
Now, so, and I think Jazz, you've only driven standard trikes because I think that's all CIA currently has, and Lewis, I believe SDC only has standard trikes as well. Although I don't know if is Gluttony a standard trike or reverse trike?
Gluttony's reverse. Gluttony's the opposite of every other SDC buggy that's been built in the last 30 years.
Did I just click something I wasn't supposed to click? I think I went back. I was trying to click a different thing, and all right, we'll move on there. Sorry, So I guess technically you have built a reverse trike now.
I guess if you want to call it, if you want to give it the credit of being a buggy.
Now, and Jazz, I don't know if you get a say in this or if this is all the mechanics on the CIA side. But I'm curious, Lewis, from your perspective, what is it about standard trikes that you guys prefer to build? Have you thought about whether you want to switch or try and build a reverse trike? or have you decided that I think Envy might have been the last one back in like 2007, and that didn't go very well. So I don't know. Like, is it something that SDC has thought about? Like, hey, maybe we should try this, or like, I mean, honestly, SDC buggies are why mess with success, right?
Well, I mean, obviously there are pros and cons to both types of designs. You know, there's a whole bunch of physics you can get into with weight distribution and rolling resistance and turning losses and all that crazy stuff. But without going into too much technical detail there, um, I think for STC, it's just historically we found the most success with standard trikes. You think, Rage was a great buggy that lasted for a long time. That was a very reliable standard trike. And then you have a buggy like Psychosis that comes out and it's just a little bit faster, just a little bit better version of Rage. And then obviously Malice is the culmination of probably the best buggy ever. That's just where we've had success. And we've had trials of other buggies where you try that reverse trike and we just haven't quite figured it out in the same way. So
And Jazz, how do you feel? Like I've always wondered, and maybe it's a little different with the smaller wheels, but back when I was doing AE Pi and we had camo, it was these massive soapbox derby wheels, and it's a standard trike where one year we had a driver who literally could not drive camo because she would get dizzy by the fact that there's this huge wheel in front of her face and it's splitting her vision in half, so she could only drive Zephyrus, which was the reverse trike we built. Again, maybe the front wheel is small enough now where it doesn't really matter, but like, do you and maybe you've never driven a reverse strike, so you might not have anything to compare it to. But do you ever have issues or concerns about the fact that you're in a standard trike where there's a wheel in front of your face basically?
CIA's last reverse trike buggy was built in 2016. And we actually used her to practice at rolls, I think for Raceday 23, but not 24. So that's actually not too long ago. I've never driven that buggy, but I have heard from the driver who originally drove that buggy, but then switched to a standard trike buggy, that the vision is a bit of an adjustment. I do believe the wheels are small enough that the issue that you're describing is able to be mitigated by looking around the wheel, but I have heard that it is easier and I guess more driver friendly to see out of a reverse trike because there's no wheel in your face. I think the bigger reason, though, that we tend to prioritize standard trikes is just a weight distribution issue so that the pushers don't lift the back wheel when they're pushing. Because if there's two back wheels, it's harder to do that compared to just one.
Yeah, I can imagine, and we'll actually see a little bit of that I think coming up on the SIGEP A men's side. They have a bit of an issue with that I think at the start of the race. And yeah, I mean I would also think. Oh, and as we see here, the SIGEP
Oh
B
my goodness.
just I don't know if the brakes just completely failed or something got screwed up there, but she clearly did not stop at all, which is it's funny because you actually know the brakes on that buggy do work because she had to hit the brakes during the women's heats. But obviously the mechanics did something, and that buggy just never stopped anywhere. That's why you have catchers, just in case, so the buggy doesn't take off. So here, coming up now, we got CIA Men's D. Jazz, you are the driver in this one. So
Yeah, I'm a career D team driver. I've driven men's D for 3 years.
So tell me, I mean, I guess with men's D, you're obviously not expecting a first place time, but like, what's going through your mind? I guess at this point in time, you're probably either loading or you're already loaded into the buggy. Like, what are you doing to prepare for this race as they bring you out to the line?
Um, I think given that it's a D team race, honestly, I actually really enjoy driving for D team because it's just for fun. I'm just having a good time. It's like it's like rolls, except I get the chance to kind of show off a little bit because there's people watching for once. Instead of like for example, even at rolls, most people on the team don't get to see the free roll section because they're at the tent or they're at the hills waiting for me to come up. So it's definitely a lot of fun. I do also enjoy that I don't have the like anxiety inducing pit in my stomach from when I drove AT because that was actually quite stressful.
Yeah, I
And also a lot of the D team pushers I like are people I know.
yeah.
In like maybe not in 24 as much, but a lot of the D team pushers are like people who have been to rolls a lot. So like it's like just fun to be pushed by like nice people that you know, even if you guys aren't necessarily gonna get a trophy.
Now, are you the type of driver who will shout things to your pushers as they're pushing up, or do you just go along for the ride and just enjoy it while you're in there?
So I if not able to be heard sometimes without screaming when I'm stationary. I don't think they'll hear me over the sound of the wheels. So I usually just have a good time in there and I don't talk to people.
Oh, that's another question I have. How loud is it inside the buggy? Is it loud, or is it a pretty quiet ride?
It's loud. I so usually at drops or at capes they will scream at us to brake. I think at drops I can hear the brake, but at capes I've never been able to hear the person yelling brake. It's entirely the visual cue of the flag.
Oh wow.
Um, so I don't know what that means for other teams, but at least personally, the flag is significantly more important than the yelling of the word break.
Yeah, the yelling is mostly for the mechanics just to will themselves to get the buggy to stop on time.
That's good to know. So if you're watching this stream and you are one of the mechanics who's handling capes or drops, just remember, yelling brake is good for the people around you, but for the driver, make sure you've got something visual, some visual cue to say like, all right, this is when you should brake. This is a very solid SDC B time coming back off that year off. And we saw there's probably a couple of seconds that were lost. The Hill 3-4 transition, they missed the shove, unfortunately. But I think at the end of this, I don't remember. I don't know if we see it in this video. Unfortunately, SDCB I believe fails drops on this one as well, so this time ends up not counting. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's
it here.
correct. But I think again, like what I was saying before, this year we really were not all that worried about winning trophies or anything like that. That wasn't what it was about for really anybody on the team.
Yeah.
We were just excited to be out there, and especially for this particular team, the men's B team. A lot of those guys are some of the people we've talked about who have been on the team for a very long time, who care a lot, who show up to rolls all the time, and they're really awesome people. So, having that team get DQ'd was obviously, that stunk for them, but at the same time, they got a chance to push. They got their really cool pictures. They had they had their fun. So at the end of the day, it was all good.
Yeah. No, that's why
it was all good there.
It's always kind of heartbreaking to be DQ'd. I mean, well, we don't really have to talk about 2023, but like the CIA DQ back in 2023 on the men's side, that of all the heartbreaking DQs that you can have, that's that might be number one on my list, just because it's so minor, it's so insignificant. It's like, did this really affect the race? But at the end of the day,
something you totally don't even think about.
Yeah, but yet at the end of the day, it's like, well, the rules say what the rules say, and there's really no way around that. That's why there's always people who say like, oh, maybe you just give like a time penalty, because it just sucks so much to be a member of that team and put up a run, whether it's a winning run, whether it's a top 6 time, whether it's just for fun, like you put up a 2:45 and you're just excited because you got to push, and then something happens somewhere where it's like, oh man, and now this, we did it and it doesn't really count. But with that said, you did put up that time, you do get that experience, and so like once you dig through that, once you process that I grief to the extent that it's grief. I mean, it's maybe at a different scale than what you really think of as grief, but like really it's all about being out there, having fun, hanging out with your friends, hanging out with your team, getting the crowd into it. It's really just it's so much fun to be part of it. As we see, this is the as Will just says, it is the 7th out of 13 men's heats. This is Spirit B and Apex C. Spirit, a team that interestingly probably has the oldest fleet of buggies. I think Invisid is the newest buggy that they've rolled, and it's a 2015 build, I believe. This buggy being Invisid. There were rumors that they might be attempting a build this year, but that did not come to pass. So hopefully, again, next year for Spirit, because we'd love to see them come out with a new buggy. As it is, Kingpin, which has been rolling on weekends, was originally built back in 2002, which makes it 23 years old this year. Their A-team buggy last year, Seraph, was 2004. Like, it's 20 years, and it's still an A-team buggy. So very impressive what they've done on the mechanicking side. But it again, you get that added oomph in the organization. You get that knowledge base when you build something new. So hopefully they'll be able to build something new soon. As we go here,
so my understanding is that they have been building this year. I don't think they were able to finish it this year, but they definitely made some good progress, is my understanding.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think next up is SIGEP A and Pika B, and we'll see a little bit more about what we were talking about before with a wheelbase in the back versus a wheelbase in the front. SIGEP A with Kraken being a reverse strike, and we'll see at the start of this next race some of the effect of having that single wheel on the back. So Jazz, so you finish your race. It went well. The team's probably happy. I mean, a 2:35.79 is ridiculously fast for a D time. Are you guys celebrating? Are you like what are you guys doing at this point in time, or is it just like now the rest of the team is huddling together, going up to the top of the hill, getting ready for that A team to see if you guys can take the win on the men's side as well?
At least personally, there's definitely like, okay, my job's done. This was my last heat of the day. Okay, I get to relax for the rest of the time. I don't have to keep an eye on the clock to be in the tent at specifically some number of minutes before my heat. But the mechanics and everyone else on the team, a lot of the other people on the team are continually like, there are more heats coming up, and they were preparing for the next one. We run 4 teams for men's and 4 teams for women's. So pretty much we get like maybe a heat, 2 heats, 3 heats of downtime, and then we have another one. But I definitely enjoy being like, okay, I'm done with the heat. I get a bit of downtime, and it's good to decompress from the adrenaline before getting back out there.
So do you, when you're out on the course, like do you mostly stick with your team? Do random alums come over and say hi, introduce themselves, and basically try to become part of your team and your environment? Do you hang out with do you go down to the shoot? Like what's your typical race day non-racing experience like?
Sometimes I definitely have stood in the chute a couple of times. Usually before my heat, I tried to stick around just in case they want me. But the mechanics are busy, and it's not advised to stay in the tent because there's usually some important task going on, and you don't want to accidentally be in their way. I like also just standing near the jumbotron and watching from the jumbotron. But yeah, like honestly, I just become a normal observer. I just kind of walk around. Maybe I get a donut. I go to the jumbotron. I go to the high traffic areas. Although I will say I do think that potentially there could be an interesting viewing spot in like in the first section of the free roll, like coming down from hill 2, but I don't see people there usually. So I was actually thinking maybe this year I can try and check out that spot. Dear.
Yeah, that.
I would have been nervous if the flagger walked out in front of me.
Well, fun fact: the SIGEP driver was they end up claiming interference on that, and they are granted a reroll for that flagger being in the way. Pika's not DQ'd because they didn't actually interfere, but because the driver had to alter what she was doing, they did get a reroll for that. But yeah, have you ever rolled against Pika in a heat?
Twice. I drove against Pika B at CID 2 years in a row.
Okay, I guess it's a little easier for you as a D team then, because Pika B is probably ahead of you, so you don't have to worry about it. I've always thought it was weird that they started putting their flagger in the middle of the street, because buggies are headed there. There's some fun, or I don't know that fun is the right word to say it, but some interesting videos from like the 1999 era and some of the earlier the stuff in the 90s where a buggy actually passes a flagger is standing not on the curb but a little bit off of the curb, and there are like 3 buggies coming down all at once, and one buggy passes between the curb and the flagger. And I don't know how the driver managed to pull that off, because I would be freaked out as a driver trying to do that, but she pulled it off. So even more impressive. But I got to imagine, I mean, you go through, obviously before the races, you'll go through a course walk, so you know where your flaggers are going to be, you know what your line's going to be, you know what the other team's line is expected to be, and where everything is going to be. But obviously when you're racing, things can change. I don't know, have you ever had in any of your races, and maybe not because it's a D team, but like, have you ever had to alter your line, or you have something come up that wasn't expected just because something happened during the race?
I've never had to adjust my lines, either because I was like far ahead of the other team or so far behind the other team. I've never had to like pass or near pass. And I've been relatively lucky that the course tends to be obstacle free. I say that though, but in 2023 I did I did have to get a reroll because of course debris. But it was small enough that it wasn't like a giant tree branch was in my way and had to swerve around it.
Yeah, that would be, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Because obviously buggies aren't designed for immediate steering like you might need to do with something like that. Because also, I mean, let's be honest, like you're lying in this thing Superman style, and yes, you have windshields and you have a certain amount of vision, but it's not like you can see 360 degrees around you and way out far in advance. I mean, especially, the whole point of the transition flag and the shoot flag is you can't even see over the crown of the road from the height you're at. So the possibility of something being in the road and you not seeing it until the last possible minute is definitely there, and puts an emphasis on the job that sweepers do to make sure that the course is as clear of debris as possible.
Shout out sweepers, by the way. Although I remember Raceday 24 being so windy that we were like, oh dear, all the sweeping has been undone.
Yeah, I think there's looking at the races coming up, I think there's at least one race, I think it might be the next heat, where you can actually see there's a gust of wind that brings some debris onto the course and right in the line of one of the buggies. Which, now, this debris is maybe like a leaf or, stuff that hopefully doesn't have too much of an impact. But even at that, like, if you're driving a buggy and something comes flying at you, I can't imagine. I'm going to turn my attention here to this race because this is an attempted pass by Apex, and the buggies collide. Now, I have to assume, Jazz, that you've never been in a buggy that has collided with another buggy. Is that correct?
Well, my buggy has collided with another buggy, but I was not the driver when this happened. I some number of races ago, Equinox was involved in the collision. Um, but that was not me. I believe that was Emily Wong.
Okay. The you know, I'm super impressed by both drivers here, especially DG's driver because DG being in the lead has what I assume is no idea, or at least very little idea of where the other buggy is behind her. And then suddenly you're making your regular shoot turn, and then bam, you feel the impact of another buggy. Part of me wonders, like, do you even feel it? Because as Lewis was saying earlier, like, buggies don't come with suspension, so there's already like bumps in the road. It's already not the most comfortable journey down the road. So how much of it is, it might just be regular motion from the roll versus a buggy making impact, although the one that we see here is probably a little this one looked a little more severe. Credit to both of the drivers for maintaining the shoot turn, because if there's one spot on the course that you don't want to collide with another buggy, it's while you're in the middle of the shoot turn. But they both, after the impact, they both managed to continue the shoot turn, make it through cleanly. DG gets a reroll as a result of that. Apex is DQ'd because, as the rule says, the trailing buggy is responsible. Much like if you're driving a car and you get hit from behind, it's the trailing buggy that is responsible unless and until they fully pass the other buggy. Otherwise, drivers are told to hit the brakes, and they'll get a reroll. So if you can't pass cleanly, just hit the brakes and just to preserve safety of buggy and driver. But a good job again by both drivers to get through that heat and pull off the shoot turns properly. From a spectator side, it adds a little bit of excitement. It's not really the excitement that anyone wants, but again, as long as both drivers and buggies come out of it okay, no harm, no foul, as they say. Well, I guess a little bit of a foul because Apex did get DQ'd, but yeah. So here we got the final 4 men's heats before 2 re-rolls, and then the couple of exhibitions left. But where we get down now to all of the A teams, the teams that are expected to do the best here. Spirit A coming into this. I forget what they did the previous year. I guess I can look it up. I have it open right now. Spirit coming off a 2nd place finish in men's with a 2:11. And a 4th place finish with their B team. So, high expectations here, or high hopes. I don't know what they were expecting for the year, what they thought they were gonna do. But they're Roland and Seraph. They had a beautiful paint jobs the last year, so they've already started to repaint for this year. So we'll see. They obviously repaint every year, so. We don't know what exactly their final designs will be, but we're gonna see soon. Now, Jazz. So, kicking it over to 2025 here a bit. How have things? There were rolls today. There were rolls last week. Obviously, there hasn't been too much. How are things going with CIA with rolls this year? How are you feeling about this year? Are you excited? Do you think you guys are going to win? What's the vibe like?
I am not gonna jinx it. But we're doing our very best, and we're just gonna put our best foot forward. We're coming off of a really big year, so I think everybody has big hopes going into race day. But I think that honestly, whatever result we got, I personally will be very happy with, just because I've seen how hard people have been working, and it doesn't really matter in the end. The trophies or anything, as long as you gave it your all. I can say that I feel a bit more casually now, after we won last year, because I think if going into race day 24, I wouldn't have said that so casually. because of how 23 went. But yeah, people have been working very hard. Shout out to our drivers, especially our new drivers. They like pick things up really quickly, and they're shaping up to be looking pretty good. There is obviously like a lot to be said about losing roles in the spring because of weather, and ideally we would have wanted more days of roles sooner in the year, but you know, everyone's affected by that and it's not anyone's fault. So we're just going to make the most of the roles we do have and try our very best on race day. I'm not going to say anything about results because I don't want to jinx anything, but I think everybody like we're all shooting for first place as you can imagine, but I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it.
Fair enough. You've heard it here first, Jazz, guaranteeing CIA wins in all 3 divisions.
Dear, no, I don't want anyone coming to me if something happens.
No. It will certainly not be your fault. No, I think I think you said it right too. I think everyone can go in with hopes. I don't know that. I don't know that any team really goes in with expectations. I think it's maybe a bad way to go into these races because, like, if you expect to win and you do win, like, all right, you're meeting expectations, and then if you don't win, you're below expectations, but you can never exceed it, right? Like, if you go in expecting, unless you go in expecting 10th and then you come in 3rd, then you've exceeded it. But because again, I think you said it exactly right. It's about being with the team. It's about the camaraderie. It's about the enjoyment of going out there and doing your best. And as long as you do your best and you leave everything on the course that you can, then eventually the results will come and hopefully it all goes well. This hill one by Pika is the craziest hill one that I've ever seen. And I would say a controversial King of the Hill decision because they gave Pika A's Hill 1 pusher. His name is I am looking it up so that I don't say it wrong. The Hill 1 pusher is Ryan Nagel. He wins King of the Hill with a 15, I think it's like a 15.2 second Hill 1. In my book, a bit controversial because he only pushed about 13 seconds of that and then shoved the buggy about as far as I've ever seen a Hill 1 shove. And the buggy rolled for 2 seconds on its own on Hill 1. So, I don't know. Are you really King of the Hill if you only ran for 13 of the 15 seconds? But, who am I to judge?
Maybe that's a new Hill 1 technique.
Honestly, I think it is. I mean, we'll see a little bit later. SDC has a bit of an early shove also, but if you're strong enough to give it that big of a shove, I mean, I think it's pointed out time and time again that a buggy, and it's the reason why the bump and run is a technique, is a buggy rolling on its own will always be faster than a buggy with a human attached to it. So if you can give the shove that gets it onto Hill 2, then by all means do it. But the distance that their Hill 1 pusher had before the transition line, it's so amazing to me that he got the buggy there. And not only did he get it there, but he got it to Hill 2 kind of flying, where the Hill 2 pusher could just pick it up like normal. So all the props in the world to him. I don't know. He pushed in 2023 as well. I don't know if he's back for 2024 or for 2025. We will see. If so, I wouldn't be surprised if he had King of the Hill again. Although I don't know if Pika has Banshee out this year or if they're just rolling Raptor. If they're just rolling Raptor, it might be a little tougher because it is I'm assuming a heavier buggy. It's a bigger buggy. That bigger doesn't always mean heavier, but I've always kind of assumed Raptor is a bit of a heavier buggy just because I feel like Pika typically uses that more as a training buggy and more for their B team than Banshee historically. So, but that doesn't mean that he can't give that one a good shove as well, and we will find out in 2 weeks. as I lost my page here for a minute to see what's up next. There we go.
Can't believe it's 2 weeks away and we've only had 2 rolls. And I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's actually perhaps why I personally am putting less weight into the competitive side because um we just, we haven't had a lot of practice. If things happen, then it's like nobody's fault.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And do you, out of curiosity, and you may not know yet, how many of your buggies have qualified already? Do you know?
As of this morning, we have one.
Okay.
Um I I have so 2 of our buggies have enough roles to be qualified, but because this year sweepstakes wants to do an observed role where the like a member of sweepstakes watches the buggy drive from the follow car.
Hmm.
We send our buggies in a specific order, so the buggies that are not the last buggy in the order isn't visible from the follow car. So we just need to get a role where that buggy is the last buggy in the order, and then we will have 2 more qualified.
Okay.
We're
Well,
trying to see if we can get buggies qualified tomorrow, but fingers crossed.
now, all right. So this is CIAA. This is men's A. Looking for redemption from the prior year's DQ. And spoiler, they do get it. Are you part of the sea of yellow running up the hill at this point?
Um, I can't remember if I was watching from a live stream in the tent or if I was with them.
Okay.
But I definitely remember watching this heat like very, very closely. Especially like just like being really anxious, like, oh my goodness, don't go outside the lane. Although this driver is very, very good. And like she would never make the same do that again. I think there was a little bit of confusion on the rules that year, but yeah, no, definitely watching this heat very, very closely and having like just being like very excited for it. I think we were pretty optimistic going
Yeah.
in. So,
I mean, for me, I always, as a buggy chair, when we used to go out to rolls, the first day we were trying to train a new driver, and the first time she got in our buggy, it was camo. The she she followed the white line a little too long and ended up kind of turning left at Westinghouse Pond and hit the brakes and flipped the buggy over and kind of rolled up onto the sidewalk. Now, she wasn't going very fast. She was like triple bagged and it's camo, so like whatever. She was fine. I got yelled at because I rolled the buggy back over and got her out before EMS came over. But that's neither here nor there. But after that, it kind of scarred me from ever being in the follow car again. So every time we would send one of our drivers down the course, I would always hide in our tent and like turn off the radio and not pay attention at all until the buggy was back. I deputized other people to be catchers and handle the rolls while we were actually rolling. As a driver, I mean, I'm sure you don't go through that. Obviously, you don't go through that when you're driving. Do you ever, like, how worried are you about your fellow drivers? Like, I mean, I would imagine you have full confidence in them to get around the course fine, and obviously you guys all have a lot of experience. But do you ever worry, like, oh, this driver, like, she's going to be going faster than she's ever gone before? Like, what if something happens here, or something unexpected pops up? Does that ever run through your mind when you're not driving?
definitely like sometimes if it's like a pretty big jump or if it's like a big change. But we tried to like I think that I really love I guess about our team is that we tried to be on the safe side. So it's more me being like anxious by nature than necessarily it typically being a legitimate like concern. Um we very rarely have incidents and sometimes I will be nervous and then things will turn out fine and I just have to remember that like everyone on our team is very competent. I did have so in October I was there was there was a roll where I was driving, and it was me and two other CIA buggies, and a CMU buggy joined us in the order. And I remember coming back to the tent, getting my hatch removed, and the head mechanic says, "Hey, Roadrunner, the buggy behind you, is not back. We don't really know what's going on." So that definitely stressed me out because I had no idea that was happening. That driver's a returning driver. She's always been very reliable. So the fact that she didn't come back is a little bit alarming. This was the incident in the fall where a police car drove around the bridge barricades onto the course near the shoot turn. So that driver ended up um pulling, like, instead of following the shoot through, which would have caused the collision with the police car, she pulled to the left and hit the brakes. But like, we were very worried when we heard that she wasn't coming, like she didn't make it around the course. She ended up being unhurt, but there was definitely like a moment of, oh dear, what is going on? This is really scary.
Oh man, I can't imagine from the driver's perspective. Like, hopefully, I mean, whether she saw the police car or whether it was a flagger that threw a stop flag or something. I I would imagine from the driver's perspective, like if suddenly you see a car in the chute and like you're about to turn there, again you've got the crown of the road, so you may not even see it at first. Like that's got to be a little nerve wracking when you're hitting the brakes. Like there is a car in my way, and that is a much bigger thing than I am.
Yeah, I've talked to her about this a lot. The flagger didn't, because the car came on the road so suddenly, this flagger didn't get a chance to give her a stop flag. So she actually saw the cop car basically driving directly in her where her path would be. So she went in the other direction and braked, and she said it was very scary. And I definitely understand her. Last I heard, Sweepstakes was following it up with the city.
Yeah.
And no, please, please, if any Pittsburgh police or CMU PD people are watching this, if you are going to come onto the course, please tell the barricader, hey, I want to come onto the course, so they can tell people to like clear the course of buggies so this does not happen. I believe there was a burglary nearby that the um, police car was trying to go address. But there was actually another police car that went right before I started my role, where they held me at the top of the hill and was like, "We're gonna let this car through," and the car went through fine. So I was pretty surprised to hear about a second police car that didn't follow protocol.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of the times police will think like, all right, we have the right of way because we're police, but and while I think we all respect that, and definitely as long as they tell us, like, we'll let them through, but if that police car makes contact with the buggy, that police car is going to cause a lot of damage, a lot more damage than they would have caused, than the potential burglar is causing. So, yeah, if any CMU police or Pittsburgh police are out there listening, just tell us before you try to drive around the barricade. Like, we'll clear the course for you and make sure that you can get through. I say that I'm not from Sweepstakes. I don't know. Maybe Sweepstakes will be a pain and be like, no, you can't get on the course. But Sweepstakes isn't going to do that because Sweepstakes are good people. Shout out to Elena, this year's Sweepstakes chair, and the rest of Sweepstakes. We're very excited to see Raceday in 2 weeks.
Excellent stuff out of them. Take a watch.
As we watch SDC's Bane complete their drop test, this was the last scheduled men's heat for Raceday 2024. SDC putting up a time of 2:09.71, which put them in second place, just 2 seconds behind CIA, but a solid return to racing for SDC after the 2023 DQ. There are just 2 more men's heats to go. They are re-rolls for CMU A first. This re-roll, however, did not end up counting. The re-roll was granted because CMU was going up against Fringe A in men's heat 3. CMU was getting a little too close to Fringe A, so rather than risk a pass in the chute, the CIA driver hit the brakes at the transition flag and came to a stop.
CMU driver.
Yeah, CMU driver. I don't know what I said, but the CMU driver
You
hit the
said
brakes.
CIA driver. I think it might be me
Yes,
influencing you with my
that's fair.
charming
Yes.
presence.
Yes, the CMU driver hit the brakes at the transition flag, so CMU was granted a reroll. However, upon tape review from the original heat, CMU A was deemed to have violated the 5-second rule. Not the one where you drop food on the ground, but the one where the mechanics are not clear of the buggy 5 seconds before the start of the race. Because that happened before the buggy had to stop, this reroll ends up being disallowed from a placement perspective. The time is still important for seating in the future because it was not a mechanical DQ. I believe that is the rule. I'm sure if Jeremy is watching, he will correct me if I'm wrong. Speaking of, Jeremy corrected me about one thing I said earlier about DG. If and when they get their new buggy on the course, it will be the first sorority-built buggy to ever reach the course. It will be the first sorority-built buggy to ever complete the course if they were to complete a race. Back in 1922, Alpha Kappa Psi did, we assume, build their buggy, but they crashed during the race, as was very common back in 1922. So, has not completed the course. But yeah, so CMU coming up here with Jaeger, and then the last reroll will be SIGEP A, who got a reroll as a result of the Pika flagger kind of being in the transition flagger being in their way, and then DGA, who got a reroll as a result of the collision with Apex A. The DGA reroll being an important one. SIGEP A, an interesting thing. If you're not super familiar with Buggy, rerolls count as your final time. They wipe out whatever time you had before that. So SIGEP, as they were deciding whether they wanted to reroll, had to keep in mind they had a 2:14.73 time that put them in 5th place. They were just point 1/10 of a second, 0.11 ahead of SDCB, hanging on to that 5th place spot. So by taking the reroll, they give up that 2:14.73, and their new time will stand. So if they were slower than a 2:14.84, they would fall behind SDCB. If they were a second or two faster, they could catch CAB with their 2:13.14. But similarly, if they failed drops or if something happened to go wrong in this heat, that 2:14.73 is gone, and the final result is just a DQ or a DNF or whatever happens in this roll. This is the roll. So they made this decision. As we're watching, it turns out that the end result is that it didn't matter, but that wasn't necessarily clear until award ceremony, because their time, they got 15 hundredths of a second slower. They put up a 2:14.88 in this heat instead of a 2:14.73, but that moved them behind SDCB, dropping them down to 6th and moving SDCB to 5th. Of course, SDCB ends up failing drops, so they were DQ'd anyway, leaving SIGEP in 5th no matter what. Maybe they knew that beforehand. If they were watching drops, maybe they were aware that they had some room on either side. Maybe they didn't, and they just wanted to take the shot anyway. But it's interesting decision making as a chair and a head mechanic. Do we think we can legitimately get faster? Obviously, the pushers have pushed once already, so they might be a little more tired. Our wheels might not be as good because we were treating them for our scheduled roll, not a reroll. But if something legitimately happened in the race where you think, oh, a new heat would be better, it's oftentimes worth taking that risk. Here, can't say it paid off for them, can't say it didn't pay off for them. They ended up with basically the same time, and they end result is they were in the same fifth place position that they would have been in had they not taken the reroll. So DG, on the other hand, gains 6.5 seconds, which makes sense because they were slowed significantly by the impact with Apex. So DG moves from what would have been 12th place all the way up to 7th and just narrowly missing a trophy spot, which they did earn the trophy on the women's side. So that is the end of the men's heats. There are 3 last exhibition heats that we'll watch. They are SAE alums, followed by CIA drivers and Apex alums. And Jazz, I don't know, did you push in that exhibition heat?
Yes, I was Hill 3.
All right. Well, when we get to that, I'm going to ask you about that. Hill 3 is my only, other than Hill 2 shoves, Hill 3 is my only experience pushing. Hill 3 is a nightmare. I hate it. But I also had a buggy that never or rarely made it through the hay bales. So Hill 3 was always long for me, the like 2 times that I did push it. Boy, Hill 3 as a driver, though, that's got to be extra tough.
See it when it's there. I won't spoil.
But yeah, so I'll go back to you. I don't know. You mentioned the incident in 2023. I don't know if you have any. Again, I guess you didn't. I asked you before if you had any stories, but if there's any shout outs you want to give to either people or teams, or if you have a favorite non-CIA team or pusher or driver or buggy, or if you have a favorite CIA one. I think I already asked about what your favorite one, at least to drive, is. But do you have a favorite paint job?
Well, I like Apex's paint jobs a lot, I will say.
Okay.
As for our team, currently, I really liked Icarus's paint job, but she's not currently rolling. Out of the current
Icarus
ones,
is really cool with the gold wings. I mean, that's a beautiful design.
I almost drove that buggy. I was recruited to drive that buggy, but things ended up shuffling around. I really like Kingfisher and Goldfinch's paint jobs, and our new buggy Starling has not been painted yet, but I have seen the design and it looks really cool.
Can I ask what color it's going to be, or can you not spoil that yet?
I will keep my lips shut
fine
for now, but you guys will find out.
I'm gonna assume, and I love the fact the CIA has gone with this bird theme. I don't know what prompted it, and I don't know if you were around when the decision was made to go with the bird theming. I think Kingfisher was the first one, which was, a COVID build. But themes, I don't know if the decision was made then to start theming around birds, or if it's really like Buggy 2 with Roadrunner that the theme was decided. But Starling, obviously, also a bird. So this will be bird number 4, which I think is long enough to make it officially a theme. My guess is the coloring of this one is going to be similar to a Starling bird, but we'll find out.
So, I believe that Kingfisher was officially the start of the trend. One of Kingfisher's build leads, Emily, I believe she has like a nickname called Ducky. This was before I was a student, but she really loves her birds, if I'm not mistaken, which is why they named Kingfisher Kingfisher. After that, we wanted to continue the bird theme because we realized we can kind of what's the word? Like retroactively decide that Emperor is for Emperor Penguin, which we actually found out not too long ago that actually her paint job is inspired by the Emperor Penguin. And we didn't know that. But yeah, so after that with Roadrunner, we decided we definitely want to start like looking at bird names. And now, like this year, I believe every single buggy we're rolling is a bird name. Given that Emperor is considered a bird name.
Now, who decides in the organization? Like, do you guys have a vote on what name you want to do, or is it like the mechanics who decide, or the builders? Like, how does CIA decide what to name a buggy?
We take submissions. It's by vote. Oh,
Oh yeah, this
look.
is your heat.
I push a little bit, yes. But we take submissions, we vote. The build leads get to veto. I forget how many they get to veto, but they do have a veto. And thank goodness for that, because otherwise, we would have a buggy named Baguette.
That's fair. I feel like there's I know there's some story that Apex alums know where it's like I think it's a similar thing on the Apex side where like they also have uh, they also have kind of this veto power, and I think there's one name that like if it wasn't or they vote on it in like pick the name you don't want, and somehow they ended up with one year they ended up with some terrible name that no one really wanted but no one voted against, and so they vetoed it and went with something else. I'm always fascinated by how teams decide their team names. The only problem with the bird one is Fringe decided to name their new buggy last year Blackbird, so it's almost it fits the CIA theme, but it's just going to cause confusion now. It's like, oh, especially if it goes up against CIA. It's like, oh, CIA going up against a bird buggy? What's going on with that? But okay, so this is your heat. This is your exhibition heat. Obviously, CIA rolling Roadrunner in its flag or cape or whatever you call that, the little CIA thing that's on it. Go behind the Apex alum, which is not surprising, mostly because there's like 30 Apex alums pushing this heat. But CIA not that far behind, especially pushed by a driver's team. Is that you waiting there for the buggy?
Oh, I get horribly burned, like really badly. I did not know like where to stand for the pickup because I've like never pushed hill 3 before. I pushed hill 5 once and I face planted. I pushed half of a hill 1. Like I get so badly burned. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that buggy did take off a little on you, which I can't blame you. I mean, especially if you've never pushed it before, like you just kind of assume. Well, two things. One is obviously the team is a team of drivers, so it's not experienced pushers who are like you're not expecting a huge hill 2 shove, and it's also like, especially if you've never pushed hill 3 before, it's like, all right, I'll stand here's the line to start the hill. I'll stand like a little before that because that's what everyone else does, and then it turns out the buggy just blows right past you.
I think it's funny because I think I actually purposely stood further down the hill because I was not expecting a big rollout. And then there was a bigger rollout. But actually, our head driver called us all to huddle before the heat, and we thought we were going against another driver team. So she was like, "Oh, we're gonna do so well. We're gonna give them a run for their money." And then we found out it was Apex alumni, and she was like, "Never mind, we're getting destroyed."
I do think to that point, I do think there were a few changes to the last minute changes to the exhibition schedule because of the delay in the morning that caused heats to be pushed back a bit. It caused some reshuffling of exhibitions, and I think a couple of the teams that had exhibitions ended up being canceled and kind of condensing it down, so there were only 3 exhibition heats at the end. But still, with that said, this is a very solid driver time that puts them. Let's see. That would have put the team last on the women's side, but not by much. Only 6 seconds behind Fringe D. And as I said on the broadcast, also faster than Zephyrus one year, which did a 4-minute time as a men's team. So yeah, very impressive. Very impressive run.
Is this BAA versus sweepstakes?
Yes, this is the final heat of the day. This is the Buggy Alumni Association versus sweepstakes, which is turning into an annual grudge match. BAA looking for revenge. 2023, I believe sweepstakes. I forget what Buggy sweepstakes had. It might. It
was Banshee.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Because Katie Zapanta was I think on sweepstakes that year and driving.
I think it was Juju.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah. Juju was design either buggy book chair or design chair and driving. That's right. That makes more sense on the timing too. Also, again, I'm old. I've been around for a while. All these dates get confusing to me. Um, but the but yeah, so they had Banshee, whereas the BAA was given Fringe's Bumper with, I believe, a rubbing break the whole time. So this time it was a bit of a fairer fight. Sweepstakes still getting SDC's Vice, which still feels a bit unfair. The BAA, however, getting Apex's Solaris, which is a real buggy that can actually put up a decent time. So
I remember the buggy book chair was CIA's RD23 chair, or one of CIA's RD23 chair, and she asked us if sweepstakes could borrow Goldfinch. I don't know exactly where that ended up going, but it does not appear to be Goldfinch. But
no.
I remember us being requested of Goldfinch for so that we could beat you guys. And I believe actually a different CI alum asked us if they could use Kingfisher for BA, but then sweepstakes wanted Goldfinch. It was funny.
And I think this year, the BAA versus sweepstakes is going to happen again. Spoiler alert for what's coming up, as in case you can't tell here, the sweepstakes does win again. It's a bit unfair because sweepstakes also had a legit Hill 1 pusher. Yes, he was on sweepstakes, but he was a legit Hill 1 pusher, whereas all of the BAA members are old. So it feels a little unfair. But this year, the BAA is expecting to get a very good buggy. I forget what sweepstakes is getting, but I think this year is expected to be like two good buggies going up against each other. I don't want to spoil what the buggies are yet, just in case things change, or if I'm not supposed to say who's getting what. But it is supposed to be two legitimate buggies going up against each other. So, however, I think again this year sweepstakes has a legitimate pusher on one of the hills. So, but this year, I am getting official word from the BAA that this year the BAA is going to smoke them. So, you know, and thankfully, Ale had to go, so she is no longer in the call. So we can trash talk sweepstakes all we want, and the BAA is going to dominate this year. You can guarantee it. Write it in pen. The BAA is going to easily win. The interesting thing here on the BAA from 2024, Wade, who is the BAA treasurer, passes it off on a Hill 4.5 to someone. I don't know who he passed it off to. This is someone who wasn't on the roster, and I don't recognize them in the shot. So I'm a little curious who it was, but it's fine. And Connor makes a run of this at the end, going up against Ale. Gets in the shot, but Ale was a little far ahead. So, it was Glenn from Spirit was the Hill 4.5. Okay. But with that, I think that is the end of our 2024 Race Day rewatch. That was the last heat. There is a 1-minute interview that we have on this playlist with CMU President Farnham Jahanian that Will conducts. But I will let that play, but you can kind of watch that on your own time. I do want to thank Jazz, especially. You're still here. I don't know if you have any last words that you want to say.
Excited to race again this year, and I hope everybody is excited to watch too. We didn't have a lot of spring rolls, but race day is still happening, and it seems like every team is working very, very hard to put their best foot forward this year. So excited to see how everyone does.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so thank you for joining me. Thank you to Ale Bonacini. Thank you to Lewis Rockwell. Thank you to Ben Matsky, who was briefly on as well, asking a couple of questions and taking over for me a bit, which was nice. This was a blast. It sounds like hopefully people enjoyed this. I love the fact that we actually had kind of interviewy things where people were answering questions, and I think this format worked well. If you're watching this, if you watch this live or if you're watching this on a rerun, I'd love to know, one, what you thought of this format with having guests on and kind of talking like that, as opposed to as much focus on the races. But two, this is 2024, so this is the most recent race day rewatch that we've done. We're thinking about whether we want to do this in the future as like both either a lead up to race day sort of thing where we watch the previous years, or as kind of an orientation week sort of thing where we watch the previous year's races. Curious what people's thoughts are, whether it's a good idea to kind of rewatch these recent the super recent ones, or if it's better to just stick with old ones. Do stay tuned this summer to the CMU Buggy YouTube channel, and as well as our cmubuggy.org website. We've got a bunch of videos that will be coming. If you're at Carnival this year, you'll get a sneak peek of some of them, especially reunion years. We've got videos from, let's see, 1970, 1985, 1990, and 2000 that have never been distributed publicly, like wide. Those will all be coming to the YouTube channel at some point, but if you're at Carnival, you'll get a sneak peek at some of that stuff. But stay tuned this summer, because we will probably do a race day rewatch of the 1990 videos where we have basically full heats for the full race day at some point. So stick around for that. Again, hopefully we'll see you in Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks for Carnival. Race day this year is April 4th and 5th. That's Friday and Saturday, just 2 weeks away, 13 days till race day. And if you are going to be there, one last call, if you are going to be there as an alum and don't have other stuff to do, if we could use help with volunteers, if you could sign up to just help set up or tear down or hang out at the BAA tent for a little bit during the day, cmubuggy.org/volunteer. You can sign up for that. Otherwise, if you need the race day schedule, it's cmubuggy.org/raceday. You will see it there. And with that, I'm Brian Arsham. I've been your host of Race Day Rewatch 24, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.